I would say morning or afternoon to whatever side you're on right now. I hope everybody had a beautiful night since I spoke to you guys last. A lot has actually happened again, as usual, believe it or not. And there's stuff to come. Definitely a lot more breaking news stuff with the Epstein case, of course. You got more stuff going on with Israel. Um, we've got uh we've got ICE, lots of ICE stuff. Trump is actually, from what I understand, is asking to release the Epstein transcripts, which is what I was saying from the beginning, is release the transcripts. Like, release the transcripts that they had already released, by the way, like years back, of his court case. Then you could start going through and pulling out names. But dude, they're not just gonna hand you a list with names on a platter for you. That's just not gonna happen. So but that being said, I hope everybody has a beautiful day, enjoys the content we're about to put out. And we are going to get this bad boy started. What's up, Billy? What's up, Ryan? Good morning, guys. Love you guys. And hope everybody else has a beautiful, blessed day. And I'm going to go ahead and get this bad boy started. Much love, much love. Let's go. Oh, look, it's Hunter Biden to start it off. Hunter distances himself from daddy. Uh-oh.
At White House, 12 days.
Hold on, guys. Boom. Oh, yeah, it's already up. Cool. All right, here we go.
Over the course of the last 2 years of the administration. Clearly, because I had other things going on. Okay. You ask one person to go on the record that would ever tell you that I was in any way making a single decision about anything in that White House. I stayed as far away as I possibly could, which, by the way, broke my heart.
It's so bad, even Hunter doesn't want to be associated with the Biden administration. The coup and the landslide shattered the structure of the party into a million pieces. And now it's up to Gavin and Tampon to save it from the commies. Black Rogan, Jamie Harrison, just launched a podcast and booked Tampon as his first guest. And the party's so broke, they couldn't afford 2 couches.
Did he call him Black Rogan? Am I tripping, or is that what I heard? Why is there
so they had to share
commercial here?
In Winnie the Pooh, you know, Democrats are a donkey, but we are sure as hell are Eeyore most of the time. Yeah. It is a woe is me party.
He called him a black freaking Joe Rogan.
Yeah, everything is dark and dim. And the Republicans remind me of Tigger. Tigger will everything up. I mean, he will just mess it all up, but never take any ownership of it. Yeah. Like, still hopeful and joyful and bouncing around and messing other things up.
I never thought of that analogy, but it is pretty apt.
Who are you calling a Tigger? Trump spent 6 months cleaning up your mess. Democrats are only woe is me because they're the party of women and they're out of power. Trump's bouncing around having a good time because he's pumping up American business. And even though Timmy and Jamie have never run a business, they want you to know they're not Marxists.
Donald Trump sells snake oil or whatever, but it's capturing this idea of wealth and being able to be successful, which we as Democrats, we want people to pay their fair share, but why are we against people being successful like that? We can't be. Why are we against? We should talk about businesses. Not all businesses exploit their workers, and we get ourselves stuck in that.
Oh, well,
and Governor, I think we lose them.
Not all businesses exploit their workers. Way to go, Tampon. The Chinese honeymoon's officially over. But the racism, that's still sticking. Tampon says one time a black guy told him not all black guys are criminals.
This is one that Wes Moore is really good at and talked to me about, talking about black men and what happened. And he said, you know, you get a lot of good-hearted politicians that'll come to black men in the community and talk about we restored felon voting rights. And he said, not knowing how insulting that is for these young men.
Tampon just found out not every black guy has a record. Waltz is learning things from all kinds of people. He just found out from his son that Trump's fun.
My son was able to vote as an 18-year-old. And I asked him about his take is, especially young white man is he said, Dad, a lot of them aren't about the policies. They're about the thrill and the excitement. And, you know, Trump brings the circus type of thing.
Then it was time to throw Kamala under the bus. And we've never heard this before from him. He's always been a very loyal number two. Tampon called Kamala lazy. He called her a quitter.
Trump even gets the whole thing about, you know, being part of a team, give them the same hat, the same slogans and stuff like that. It's maddening to us. For a while there in August, I think we were giving them that place to go. You gave it to them in Chicago. You gave them something. And then we just kind of quit.
We did.
He didn't quit for 4 years.
Imitation is the greatest form of flattery. Democrats may hate Trump, but they love that he's the real deal. Quote, party leaders are swearing more, recording more direct-to-camera videos, and trying to project an authenticity many voters have come to associate with Trump. You can't act authentic. You either are or you aren't. Black Rogan was downright giddy.
I'd have to agree with that. A year ago, I couldn't do half the stuff I'm able to do now.
To tell Tampon that the only rule was no rules.
It's family talk. It's street talk. There's no frills, no fancy words. You know, feel free to drop F-bombs or whatever you got to do whenever you got to do it.
Everybody wants to be like Trump. After 47 served fries at Mickey D's, Gavin's locking up the Hispanic vote, making tortillas. Remember when Trump posted a taco bowl on Cinco de Mayo? They called him racist. But what do they call Gavin sweating in the back of a Mexican restaurant? At least he learned his lesson. He's not serving caviar at the French Laundry. Meanwhile, no matter how hard the white guys try, the commies stealing their base and their property.
Would life be better if we just abolished private property?
I think it probably would be better. That's not what my platform is, that I'm saying to abolish it, but my platform is to decommodify it. The system has hundreds of thousands of people unhoused, right? For what? And if there was any system that could guarantee each person housing, whether you call it the abolition of private property or you call it, you know, just a statewide housing guarantee, it is preferable to what is going on right now.
Kami Mamdani says abolishing private property is a good idea. This is the guy Democrats are swooning over because he's so authentic. I guess he is authentic. He's saying the things the rest of the Democrats believe but are afraid to say. That's why they love him. So if I understand this correctly, Mamdani is a commie, but he's not running as a commie.
This guy is not a communist. He's not a socialist. He's an advocate for small c capitalism. And that, you know, he really is fighting for the little business guy that's trying to eke out a living in New York. Half of all New Yorkers, you know, get their jobs from small business.
More like small c communist. It is a red wave and not the good kind. First New York, now Minneapolis. Here's their next mayor.
It is a big spending bill. Like I said, it's $400 million, but to be honest, it's not an expense, it's an investment. It is relatively small compared to the scope of the issue of systemic racism. This country was founded on wealth extraction from the labor of Black people, and that legacy will just not fade by itself. It needs to be uprooted.
This is what the next 3 years is going to look like. Semi-straight white guys trying to win back the working man, while a young communist typhoon sweeps the base off its feet. Even CNN admits the Dems are cooked.
The bottom line is this. Democrats are behind their 2006 and 2018 paces when it comes to the generic congressional ballot. Look at where we are now. Democrats are ahead, but by just 2 points. Look at where Democrats were already ahead by in 2017. They were behind by 7 points. How about 2005 on the generic congressional ballot? Ahead by 7 points, ahead by 7 points. And now they're only ahead by 2 points.
Not only are the American people quitting the Democrats, Democrats, like Kamala, are quitting on the American people. Senator Spartacus and his crew are just walking off the job instead of doing it.
Why are you doing this? This is outrageous.
This is a kangaroo court. That's what we have here,
This
Mr.
is
Chairman.
wrong. To violate your own rules without going by the mandates of the parliamentarian. This is unbelievable. There's a way to do this. If you want to force this through, If you want to ram this through, there's a way to do it in accordance to the rules as spelled out by the parliamentarian. It is simple. It is clear. There's a pathway to achieve what you're trying to achieve.
More bad news for the Democratic Party. Take a look.
Congressional Democrats have been trying to seize on this. You hear them also parroting what you're hearing online, saying, release the files, this is terrible, blah, blah, blah. I mean, is that working for them?
No, I mean, look, here's what's so important. You know, we talk about the potential of Republicans leaving Donald Trump. They're not leaving him. But what about congressional Democrats and problems with their own base? Democrats' net approval of congressional Democrats, according to Quinnipiac University, in June of 2025, it was their second worst ever at minus 12 points. It's not low enough for you? How about we go even lower? In July of 2025, minus 13 points, their worst net approval rating for congressional Democrats among Democrats ever. Donald Trump is not the one who has problems with his political base. It is congressional Democrats are the ones who have problems with their own political base.
And then, by the way, they go on to point out Donald Trump, well, his numbers went up from last month. Now, the left's latest smear is not working. At the same time, Democrats now have their worst approval rating in history. Look at this. It's even worse in a brand new Quinnipiac poll where congressional Democrats now have a record low 19% approval rating. But Democrats, if you are watching tonight, let not your heart be troubled, because your party's so-called leaders, they have come up with a plan, a new plan. Since they can't beat Donald Trump, they're going to try and channel Donald Trump. According to a report, Washington Post, Democrats are now coordinating their public remarks to we'll pretend they're less scripted, with more cursing and, quote, Trumpier insults. I wonder if this came from the extensive amount of millions of dollars they spent on research on how to communicate properly with men. Hey, Joe, did you see the big game last night? Joe, want to go grab a brewski? Man, oh, I really like that girl. What do you think of her? Really? You have to, it's so inauthentic, lacking all authenticity. Anyway, Democrats are fake, phony. They're now scripting a plan to seem less scripted. Figure that out. Naturally, presidential wannabe Gavin Newsom, he's already testing the waters. He got the message early. Take a look.
It's a weakness masquerading as strength. That's what I don't like about this son of a. I don't. And forgive me. I know he's the president of the States. Forgive me. I didn't,
Yeah, forgive me. I came right out of the research. Now, the one thing they all know is they can't be themselves. Why? Because they're so out of touch with all of you, and they lack authenticity. So Trumpian insults is not the Democrats' biggest problem. Instead, it's the very authentic, very radical Marxist base that now is the bigger part of that party. That is the power structure of the Democratic Party. And Chuck Schumer, Hakeem Jeffries, they're not going to dare take on Jasmine Crockett or AOC or the Squad or Mamdani and, turning off scores of insane American voters. Why would they do that? In fact, most Americans now detest communism for good reason. It is responsible for the death of millions and suffering of billions and more poverty than you can imagine. When Democrats nominate an actual communist Marxist to be the next mayor of America's biggest cities, voters across the entire country take note. And tonight, a newly unearthed video shows Marxist Mamdani advocating for the government to ban private property. Karl Marx would be proud. Take a look.
Would life be better if we just abolished private property and transformed our society into a more collective, egalitarian one?
I think it probably would be better. I mean, I think that.
Want to learn something useful? Then instead of watching YouTube videos, invest in your study. It's 2025. AI can build a pro-level website within.
I needed to get a different one of these.
Look, that's not what my platform is, that I'm saying to abolish it, but my platform is to decommodify it. My platform is that every single person should have housing. If there was any system that could guarantee each person housing, whether you call it the abolition of private property or you call it, just a statewide housing guarantee, it is preferable to what is going on right now.
All right, this is now the third or fourth video where Mamdani is pushing for actual Soviet-style hammer and sickle Marxism, communism. So take note, comrades out there, when someone tells you who they are, believe them. Make no mistake, Mamdani's extremism, it knows no bounds. In fact, in the very same interview, Mamdani even questioned the purpose of prisons. What? Take a look.
Are prisons obsolete?
Whew, coming through with the quotes, coming through with the titles of the books. I have to read that, actually. I haven't read that as yet. But I think that, frankly, I mean, what purpose do they serve?
Right.
Right? I think we have to ask ourselves that, which is that, you know, I think a lot of people who defend the carceral state, they defend the idea of it and the way it makes them feel. They're not defending the reality of it and the practices that are part and parcel of it.
Now, what purpose could they actually serve? Maybe keeping violent offenders, murderers, rapists, other violent criminals away from peace-loving Americans so they have law and order and safety and security for themselves, their children. Just a thought. And now couple Mamdani's prison ban with his call to defund the police and send in the social workers to violent crime scenes. Sir, are you threatening to kill all these people? Is it because of something that might have happened in your childhood? I don't think that's going to work. And of course, he wants to seize private property, control New York's food supply, raise taxes, especially on people living in whiter neighborhoods, and somehow abolish billionaires. And let's not forget his rabid anti-Semitism. He cannot even simply reject the calls for global intifada. Mamdani is scary for not only New York, but for the country. But it is also the state of the modern extreme, radicalized Democratic Socialist Party. And, you know, nowhere do the lights shine any brighter than the media capital of the world. But instead of speaking out against this kind of extremism, no. Democrats are either cowering in fear or they're lavishing praise on their new favorite Marxist communists. Take a look.
I will endorse him. Look, he's a very charismatic, relatable person.
I think he's a very personable, smart young man.
He's not a socialist. He's an advocate for small c capitalism.
He is so smart, so authentic. Anybody that's staying out at this point instead of endorsing this incredible dynamic leader is missing an opportunity.
Here's a crazy thought. You think it's impossible? Think Mamdani might run for president in 28? No. Don't rule it out. It gets even more nauseating. Apparently, Maryland Senator, remember Chris Von Hollen? He was the biggest fan of Abrego Garcia. He has a thing for bad people. Anyway, first he was pictured with a margarita staring deeply into the eyes of an accused human trafficker, gang member, illegal immigrant. And now here he is with that same loving gaze peering into the eyes of a radical Marxist who wants to seize your house, tax you to death, and put you in a beautiful commune. But this is the state of the modern Democratic Party. They want to totally dismantle the United States of America as we know it. They think capitalism is evil. They do not believe in meritocracy. They don't believe in hard work, and they want to rule our country with an iron fist and a sickle and a hammer with woke social workers, not police. And for anyone who seems to think it might be a good idea, I do encourage you to speak with someone who maybe immigrated from Castro's Cuba or the former Soviet Union or North Korea or any other communist hellhole where things are so miserable that people will get on broken down, dilapidated, rickety boats in shark-infested waters and try and navigate to their way to freedom to escape life under communism.
I know. That's right. That's right. Just one more hour till Trace Gallagher. Happy Thursday, everyone. So Kristi Noem hinted that people will now be able to bring more than 3.4 ounces of liquid on flights. But one woman is hoping that they up that to a half gallon. Let's do it. I'm with you, baby. Andrew Cuomo is being blasted for a new campaign ad where he helps jumpstart a man's car, which is odd considering he usually only stops to check out women's headlights. Hunter Biden said he tried to stay out of his dad's administration. It's true. He claimed he was just living at the White House because he wanted to bang Jill.
No, Lori, I can't.
If you're a man over
stand
30 who makes at
that.
least 150 grand a year and you're still embarrassed to take your shirt off at the pool, your number one priority should be to get shredded while you still can. Because the longer you wait, the harder and more unlikely it becomes that you get the body you've always wanted. And I can guarantee that you'll regret not doing so. I will get you chiseled like a Greek god in record time for the summer, or you don't pay a dime. I'm John Mattson, founder of Superhuman. We help high-income men get shredded without spending the entire day working out and putting chicken and lettuce in a plastic container like the broke gym junkie who has no life outside the gym. Financial success with a soft and weak body isn't winning. You can have all the money you want in your bank account, but if your body doesn't match up, your neighbors and coworkers won't really respect you, your kids won't look up to you, and your wife, she'll secretly wish you looked like her bestie's husband, the guy who has the money and the chiseled six-pack. They may not say it, but you know it's true, because deep down, you know you're weak and out of shape. You can see it in the mirror every single day, and you can feel it when you try to play sports with your kids. But no matter how hard you try to stick to working out consistently, how diligent you are with that depressing diet, or how many sets your personal trainer has you do, the scale never moves. The abs stay hidden under the handfuls of flab, and the body, strength, and energy you used to have feel further and further out of reach. You need something different, and that's what I want to show you today.
Oh, shit. Damn it. I'm not.
The New York Times editorial claims defunding NPR and PBS is like defunding the police. It's true. Think of all the times you've been violently assaulted and thought, man, if only the cast of Downton Abbey were here.
Sorry, everybody. I was typing in the chat. I'm not used to them having commercials on here. They normally don't.
Trump's tariffs brought in $64 billion in the second quarter. Even Biden officials were impressed, saying, think of how many drag shows in Africa that could pay for. A New York man who filmed up to 13,000 people in a hospital bathroom won't get jail time. But thanks to all that experience filming hours of crap, he's been named head of programming at CNN. Worked on that one. All right. I apologize for this next joke. On Wednesday, a speeding truck spilled over 20,000 rotten eggs in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Why was he in such a hurry? Well, he didn't want to be the last one there. All right. I'm not explaining it because I'm ashamed of it. Oh, it gets worse. It gets worse. The Steve Miller Band has canceled all of its tour dates because of global warming.
Oh, God.
Yeah, organizers admit it's a waste of fuel to go from Phoenix, Arizona, all the way to Tacoma, Philadelphia, Atlanta, LA. Nice. And finally, according to a new study, magic mushrooms can extend the lifespan of rodents. Yeah. Well, I guess Richard Gere's gerbil gets to go on 2 trips. Yeah, he gets to go on 2 trips now. Not just 1, but 2 trips. All right. So Joe Biden's longtime aide was called to testify on Joe's decline. Well, I hope someone asked him if President Joe Biden was fit to exercise the duties of the president.
Was President Joe Biden fit to exercise the duties of the president?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer the question pursuant to my Fifth Amendment rights under the Constitution.
Gotta say, it's good to see that fella found work since they canceled Portlandia. But that was Jill Biden's so-called work husband, which is like being her regular husband, except with more solid food and less diarrhea. Anthony Brunel was Jill's chief of staff and an assistant to Joe Biden, which is pretty amazing, given that having just one of those jobs would have you skydiving without a parachute. But according to Jake Tapper's book, he had another job, running the country. He was part of a tight-knit inner circle they called the Politburo, who acted as Joe's ultimate decision makers. And according to his old staff, he was no Mr. Rogers, with one former aide calling him the worst person they ever met. Well, I guess he's never met this guy. But this fella is not just some loyal no-name. He's a main player. And he's the second Biden administration member to plead the fifth after his old doc refused to answer questions last week. I haven't seen this many people go quiet since Brit Hume asked Special Report if they wanted to see his tramp stamp. So obviously they're hiding something. Like, why would Joe never take any interviews? Who was behind the last-minute pardons? Who made the terrible decisions, the kind that turned a career moderate into a Bolshevik? And why was his schedule emptier than a swimming pool near a burrito truck? Meanwhile, Hunter has his own beef, saying the Dems only lost because lost to Trump because they weren't loyal to his father, the leader of the party. Yeah, that's the reason, champ. So you don't think the border had anything to do with it, or the sky-high inflation? How about the economy propped up by fake statistics and government jobs? Or the fact that Joe turned into a Volvo crash dummy every time he encountered a staircase? Appearing on the former DNC chair's podcast, think Joe Rogan for people who've been spayed or neutered. Hunter painted Joe's 24 bid in a positive light. That his father had the advantage of incumbency and an incredibly successful administration. Yeah. Sorry, dude. Calling Biden's White House an incredibly successful administration is like calling Liquid Plumber an incredibly successful laxative.
Man, it really happened.
It's not. I learned the hard way. Hunter also called BS on Tapper's claim that he acted as his dad's chief of staff, saying that when it came to the White House, he stayed as far away as he possibly could. But we know better. The only time Hunter stays away is if Maury Povich tells him he's the dad. Fact is, Joe was never in charge. That's the real story, and it's one so shameful the media covered it up like black spray paint on Jesse's bald spot. So how do we get these answers? How do we give the most consequential political scandal of our time the justice that it deserves? House Republicans have an idea. Ask Joe and Jill. The GOP isn't ruling out calling on the former first couple to testify. Florida Congressman Byron Donald said he wants to subpoena every member of the Biden administration about the cover-up. He claims he doesn't care if they were a secretary, a janitor, or even Joe's mortician. But I can picture it now. Comer would put Joe under oath, but first he'd have to ask him to turn around. But it's not like it can get any worse for the Dems. They're polling at an all-time low at 19%. They're less popular than AIDS at a kissing booth. I know. It's not popular at all. So will Joe take the stand, even if he can barely stand? Well, why not ask him? So, Joe, are you going to testify?
Oh, yeah. Come on, man. I'll testify, all right. I'll raise my right hand. And I'll swear to hold the men and women and the thing. Anyway, look, I'm serious about this. Any court in the land, you pick the judge. Judge Judy, Judge Wapner. Wapner, he's a good guy. Wapner every day at 4. I used to watch him. And I remember I went on a road trip with my brother Charlie. And every day I made Charlie pull over the Buick Roadmaster so he could watch People's Court. That's right. And then we ended up in Vegas and counted cards. Made 85 grand. True story, not a joke.
Let's welcome tonight's guest. He looks like a guy who files noise complaints before 8 p.m. Fox News contributor Tom Shalhoub. You've seen him at clubs across the country selling hot dogs. Writer and comedian Joe DeVito. He uses big words and gives hope to nerds. Senior editor at the Free Press, Will Ross. And she hates government pork and once interviewed Bjork, host of the Kennedy Saves the World podcast, Kennedy. Tom, did you miss doing Joe Biden? Hadn't done that in a while.
I know it's good. It's good to be back. You know,
It takes you a while to get out of character.
exactly. It's no, I love doing it, even though it's the same joke every time.
No, they should not have listen.
No hearings?
I hate hearings. You never get anywhere with the hearings. The thing is, we all know what happened. We saw it with our own eyes. We saw it unfolding as he was president. And the idea that we're going to be like, discover something. We know he was an old man. He could barely function.
But then what about justice?
I mean, it's like, what are you going to do? I almost feel bad for these guys. Like this guy was terrible. He couldn't do his job. But you're the chief of staff. I mean, what are you going to do? Like, I wouldn't let him talk either.
Yeah.
I'd be like, we can't send him out there. That would be malpractice. So, the whole thing's, it's a mystery, Greg. I mean, are you going to get justice? What do you do?
I think if we had an actual journalism industry, they would go after this story like a dog on a bone. I just came up with that. But they won't. So it's up to us. And you're right. All hearings are is grandstanding. It's just a bunch of people who want to be on TV getting their sound bites. It's a lot harder than it looks. So I think, no, I get it, but you offer no solutions. I don't know why I have you on the show. Joe. Oh, thank you. You agree. I love that Hunter Biden is accusing the Democrat Party of not being loyal to his dad. He banged his brother's wife.
Yeah.
His brother died, and he gets his brother's wife hooked on what? Meth?
Yeah.
And then bangs her. He basically turned her out like a whore.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, that's actually a good plan if your father's Joe Biden, because it's one less name for him to forget. So, but yeah, Hunter talking about loyalty. I mean, he's in the loyalty program for Motel 6. With every third stay, he gets a free prostitute. It's insane. But I think Tom, in a way, has a point that I'm tired of this even being called a cover-up at this point, because we watched it happening. We saw Joe Biden at the debates. I've never seen a debate where the podium had an IV next to it and a handrail. I mean, it was a mess. So I think the only thing we can do is take a look at it and say, how do we stop this from happening again? But the part I want to see is if he was this incapacitated, these pardons have to be null and void, because auto pen, he could work an auto crayon. He was out of it.
That's the solution Tom didn't come up with that you did, Joe. You stay. Okay, so Will, all right, you kind of get where they're going at. They're saying we shouldn't have a committee, but imagine that the situation was reversed. This was a Republican administration that had a senile president that covered it up with the Dems and the media would go out of their way to destroy it. And instead, we're just going like, move on. That's wrong.
All right. Yeah. I mean, you're right. That is what would happen to a Republican. Like, we all know that.
Yes.
Republicans and Democrats are subjected to different rules by the mainstream press, the legacy press. But, hasn't this really taught us that maybe we don't even need a president? Like, I mean, isn't that sort of the big lesson? And not only that, you think about it, it's like maybe there's this new world order, this global cabal that controls everything. And then you find out it's really just kind of like a bunch of dopes. It's like Joe Biden, who at like his best was, not a genius, let's say. Yeah. And then his like closest friends, his people and everything, also probably not the brightest people in America. And they're running the show. The federal bureaucracy is marching along. The cabinet secretaries are doing their things. Yeah, a lot of bad stuff happens.
Yes,
but but it's the same bad stuff that would have happened if Biden was competent and with it.
Okay, I agree that the difference between no Biden and Biden in a Biden administration might be minimal.
Yeah.
But they got him into the White House based on a moderate thing. And then we ended up with no border, all this trans hysteria, criminal justice reform that lets people out, and people like you, Will, on this show.
Thank you, Gregory.
You're welcome.
It's always good to see you.
It's great to see you. Later, drinks. Kennedy.
Hey everyone,
Oh,
big heads up.
God.
Paleo Valley's running a
What does
sale on
that
all their
mean?
meat sticks right now. You can get 30 sticks for $36.
What does that mean?
How are you?
Good.
Great. So Joe brings up a good point about, okay, let's say you don't go after them in the sense of a committee hearing like they did with January 6th, which was this big theater, but you go after the pardons and you go after the commutations. There was two different things, I think. Is that possible? We've talked about this.
Well, if it is possible, I think Democrats would be all ears and all eyes because they want to figure out how to undo everything that Trump is doing right now. And they will anticipate. So if the precedent is that you can go ahead and pardon 4,000 plus people, then why wouldn't the Trump administration do that? Why, I'm sure there are plenty of people who are unjustly imprisoned and have been a victim of the criminal justice system across the country that they would also like to pardon. And Democrats will try and undo all of that.
Mm-hmm.
But it will fall on deaf ears because where was the outrage?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the problem with the whole thing. I mean, that's my biggest issue with the political system that we have is if the other guy was doing it, you would be incensed. But if your guy is doing it, you're enthralled. Like you can't get enough of it. And can we just stop putting a microphone in front of Hunter Biden's face? For him to say stupid things like, yeah, Jay Tapper said I was the chief of staff, and I wasn't the chief of staff. I lived there, but I never went there. And he has this like really high, goofy voice that's just impossible to listen to. And it's like, if they chose Hunter Biden, if that dumb committee, if that committee of idiots chose Hunter Biden to be like the main guy, it's like, boy, did we dodge a bullet.
Mm-hmm.
And when they put the mic in front of his face, he tries to light it.
All right. Excellent. That's how you do it, Tom. Up next, the media plays the victim.
Hey, Sean.
I actually want to play that video now, to be honest. I actually want to play that now. I actually can, even though it wasn't part of the reel, if I could find it real fast. It wasn't part of it. It's supposed to be news, and then I was gonna play it. But we could do it. I'm already there now, guys. We can do it. Fuck it. Let's go. I think he's funny. I don't care yet. I think he's funny as hell. Nothing like a good wake and bacon laughing. Maybe it's just that.
Reporter gets PTSD from Trumpers.
For those of us there, it was such a horror because you saw an emerging America. And it wasn't the shooting, Chuck. I got diagnosed with PTSD within 48 hours. I got put on trauma leave, not because I think of the shooting, but because you saw it in the eyes, the reaction of the people. They were coming for us. If he didn't jump up with his fist, they were going to come kill us.
I know.
There was a subset, not everybody. There's dozens of people in the crowd who started comforting us, saying, you did this. This is your fault. You caused this. You killed him. And they're going to beat us with their hand.
All right. Joe, that was CBS News' Scott MacFarlane claiming that he got PTSD from Trumpers after the assassination attempt in Butler because they were looking at him meanly.
Yeah.
In 48 hours, 24 hours, he was diagnosed. He's the real hero.
He is. He is. And I hope he got some other good medical advice from his gynecologist. It shows you the level of the main character syndrome that they were at a place. A man died. The guy running for president almost got his head blown off on live TV. And this guy's like, but what about me? What about what I went through? And I think if I had been there, I would have been traumatized by after the bullet went through Trump's ear when he got swarmed by that elite team of Secret Service midgets.
Yeah.
And all these tiny little chubby ladies. It was the most bizarre. I would have been freaked out by that.
Yes.
I didn't know that the Secret Service would have 24 tiny Melissa McCarthy's climb all over you to save your life. So that would have traumatized me.
Yes. That's every man's nightmare.
Yes.
Well, this is actually, it speaks to something that like everybody's kind of like scared to talk about, which is the overdiagnosis of PTSD. It used to be just for like people who suffered like war trauma or just violent trauma. Could be rape, whatever. But now it's like people say, I have PTSD. I had a terrible boss. He gave me. Oh, I was at a rally. What do you make of this?
I mean, listen, I'm a little soft on this issue. I'm a millennial. I was traumatized twice on the way here. So I feel for the guy. Listen, people snap, weird things happen. I don't know. Here's the thing, but going to that main character syndrome thing, you know, there's this big reward for emoting for going on. It's like, let me tell you about my feelings. Let me go and tell Chuck Todd's podcast audience about how I felt. And it's like, I'm an editor. A reporter comes to me. It's like, let me tell you with my feelings. I'm like, no, the story is the president got his ear shot off, not how you felt, how people gave you dirty looks. That's actually not the story. And you know what? You don't have to talk about it. There's no rule that's saying you have to talk about it. You can't shut your yap.
Yes, that is true. You have the freedom of non-expression.
Right.
Yeah. Kennedy, it's kind of interesting that so he got PTSD from a threat that he imagined. So in a weird way, he gave himself PTSD.
Yeah, no, he's a head case for sure. I don't think he got the right diagnosis from City MD or the Minute Clinic or wherever he went. And the physician's assistant who was high was like, yeah, sure, man. Yeah, take this to your boss. Just take time off work. I don't care. But what I was thinking is, in the moment, this literally could be the story of a lifetime if you were a journalist. And, you know, as people are scrambling for information, they don't know how badly the president has been hit. They don't know if it's multiple gunmen. We knew that there was a threat from an Iranian fatwa that, you know, was very active, and his Secret Service detail was very, very concerned about. So with all of those knowns and so much unfolding before him, he's looking at the crowd and he's worried that they're giving, and it's like, what kind of a journalist are you?
You shouldn't even
Are you not trying to like gather sources and information so you can tell?
You shouldn't even notice the crowd.
Of course not. That with all the other things going on, like how many people have been hit? How many EMTs were there? What was the Secret Service doing? You know, were there shots fired from other directions? Like, those are the things that might give you PTSD later on, but not, yeah, and this guy looked at me and I could tell he was mad and he was going to hurt me with his hands. It's like, that would be so far down the list in the story of the century.
It's like, Tom, it's like you go to a movie theater to watch a movie and you're looking at the people next to you and you're going, I hope they like me.
Yeah, oh yeah.
It's like, no, watch the freaking movie.
I know. What is the analogy for this? It'd be like, it'd be like being at the Lincoln assassination and being like, my real worry was that I was going to miss the end of the play. That's not even enough of an analogy. I had to watch this thing twice. I couldn't believe it. It was a
Get to the next news. Yeah.
He's kind of a communist. And his name is Zoran the Destroyer, but we'll call him Zoolander. AOC calls it love at first sight, but her house is divided.
Get to know him. Get to know him. You know, this is not about having any kind of hard line. I think that if anybody is skeptical, I would say get to know him. And once you get into a room with him, kick the tires yourself and make your own assessment instead of just kind of making assessments from what you may see on television.
The Latina from the Bronx just wants the fam to give her new work husband a chance. She knows it's a tough sell. Her last work husband pulled the fire alarm and her family says no mas. But AOC's got a thing for bad boys. Today, she snuck Zoolander into the house while everybody was still sleeping. She had him in a little room and pulled the shades down and had people come in one at a time. First up, the crazy aunt.
In other news, Ohio residents are going to be happy to hear this. It just came out. There's a new website where any Ohio resident, as long as you live within a zip code in the state.
When did these motherfuckers? They just put ads.
I'm Johnny, who is the leading candidate for mayor in New York City. He has so many incredible firsts, but the thing I love about Zoran is what he is doing to lift up working people.
Whatever Zoolander did to Aunt Jayapal worked. She said good guys are hard to find, but AOC is one lucky gal.
It's hard not to be won over because it's the combination of his authenticity, his smarts, and his commitment to lifting up working people and making life better for real folks that is really inspiring and not always easy to find.
Some Democrats couldn't even wait for the wedding. They were so excited that love was in the air.
You know, it's just beautiful to have someone who is so authentic. You know, that's money cannot buy that. And we had a great conversation.
Then AOC introduced him to Daddy. Dad's actually a bit of a socialist himself. He's been called a communist his whole life. So he has a soft spot for Zoolander. They hit it off immediately. Zoolander's the son Bernie's always wanted. Sources say Bernie recommended Moscow for the honeymoon. AOC wanted Mom to meet Zoolander too, but Pelosi wasn't around. We always knew Mom was going to be a problem. AOC's been on the phone with her all week. Mom, he's not really a communist. I swear, he's only a socialist. Pelosi's side of the family isn't really into communism. Mom's tried her whole life to keep the communists out of the house. Nancy broke her hip, and she's just not feeling up to it. Uncle Jeffrey's doesn't look like he's going to the wedding either.
Why are you not endorsing the guy that won the Democratic primary in a contested election in your backyard?
Well, I look forward to sitting down and talking to him. I didn't get involved in that primary election, and I don't know him well.
Hips don't lie. Hakeem's like, I don't really know the groom at all. I kind of liked her with Bowman. The whole house was a big pot of gossip. Is he really a communist? What's with the beard? I hear he hates Jews. Is that really true in New York? Aunt Kathy says, don't be panicking. If Bill and Hillary can stay together, we can get through this.
I've become the therapist in chief, it seems. So saying, everybody, we're going to be okay. Maybe it's the mom in me. I know how to calm down situations, and we'll get through this. You know, don't panic, everybody.
The house is torn, but people on the street are already voicing their objections. Zoolander was supposed to meet all the bankers yesterday, the guys who were supposed to pay for this wedding, and they bailed. Jamie Dimon was a no-show, and the only bankers who did go thought he dressed really well, but they just don't think he's good enough for their beautiful New York. And no, he's never going to change.
They heard a really charming, affable guy who was well prepared. He made jokes, he made self-deprecating jokes, but they did not hear someone who changed his policies. And so if you had concerns about his economic policies going into the meeting, you had the same concerns going out.
Zoolander doesn't show the kind of smarts and initiative that the family bankers are looking for. AOC was disappointed, but she knew this was going to be an issue. So she sat him down and said, look, my family's spending a lot of money on this wedding. The whole river to the sea thing, that's not going to fly. We can have all the government-run grocery stores we want after the wedding. But for now, just say you're applying to business school. And remember, you're Indian, not black. Got it?
There's reporting out there that he is going to no longer use the term globalize the intifada, that he's going to suggest to other people to not use it as well. Do you think, first of all, what do you think of that?
I think in a way that it will calm fears and anxieties. He's a smart man. He'll do what he needs to do.
If Zoolander can just do what he needs to do until the ceremony on Election Day, he's got it in the bag. After that, he can do whatever he wants. He can grow out his beard, defund the police, freeze rent, legalize drugs, whatever. If Zoolander wants a big, fat freak wedding, he's going to have to behave because he hasn't been saving. He's still living off his parents.
I worked until January, and then I took time away from my job. And one of the major reasons I could do so was because I knew that if I ran out of my savings, my family would be able to support me.
The groom's father is a nutty professor at Columbia, and his mother's a Bollywood filmmaker. And wait until you see his best man. That's Omar. He's running for Minneapolis mayor and wants to build a big, beautiful bridge to Somalia. He says Caucasians look like terrorists, and he hates ICE.
Protect our city from a hostile White House. Protecting all of our communities from Donald Trump means not letting MPD interact with ICE, whether it's for an immigration raid or not. Zoolander's side of the family's freaking out.
The whole side is. They never thought this is what the next generation would look like. But they're putting on a brave face.
I think the party is moving more in a socialist direction. You know what? Is the party moving more in a socialist direction? It's a question by the media to try to stigmatize the Democratic Party. Every member of Congress runs in a district that is unique, and we all can learn from each other. We are a party that has a big tent.
They should stop worrying about their tent and start worrying about their polls. Democrats' approval rating just hit a new low. Only 19% approve. You know who's more popular than that? Biden. Democrats are going backwards, and the cream of the crop not rising to the top. AOC raised more money than anyone in the Democrat caucus. You know who was number two? Her maid of honor, Crockett. So if anyone tries to crash the wedding and break up the big, beautiful ceremony, AOC is just going to take her big, beautiful wad of cash and elope, because the heart wants what the heart wants.
Welcome to Hannity. And tonight, another member of the Biden White House is pleading the fifth, this time Joe Biden's chief of staff refusing to answer questions under oath about the former president's cognitive decline and the administration's illicit use of that auto pen. We'll check in with Chairman James Comer, Greg Jarrett. They will weigh in on what is now growing to be a massive scandal, the potential legal trouble that is now brewing. Also tonight, the border czar, Tom Homan, will be here to respond to a laughable op-ed in the New York Times. Try to contain your laughter at home, but the headline reads, "I was one of Biden's border advisors. Here's how to fix our immigration system." Wow, really? We need advice from the very people that created the most preventable national security disaster, unmitigated disaster in our country's history? Wow. And they lied about it for 4 years. Let's take their advice. All right, but we begin tonight, a simple question. Is there anyone in the Democratic Party, anybody, maybe John Fetterman, but he's probably it, that is willing to stand up against the very woke, anti-Semitic, and some of them, Marxist, communist status, the ones that are now leading the Democratic Party and our country down a very dark path? Schumer, Jeffries, Pelosi, along with every so-called moderate Democrat and governor, they're all cowering in fear. They are impotent. They are paralyzed with fear. In the world's greatest city, top Democrats are now kissing the ring of a 33-year-old devout Marxist named Zoran Mamdani, or as we affectionately refer to him on this program, Marxist Mamdani. Now, Zoran does not have an impressive resume or a list of accomplishments. As a matter of fact, none. Zero. He has virtually no experience in the private sector and very minor experience in government. He's no expert, I can tell you that, on economics or logistics or the law, but he is an avid believer in communism. And in today's radical Democratic Party, extreme Democratic Party, that's pretty much all it takes. Well, communism with plenty of anti-Semitism mixed in. So today, Democratic lawmakers, they welcome Marxist Mamdani with open arms into our nation's capital. A warm welcome for him. Take a look.
I am here with Zoran Mamdani, who is the leading candidate for mayor in New York City. He has so many incredible firsts, but the thing I love about Zoran is what he is doing to lift up working people. And Zoran, what can people do to help your campaign?
Well, first of all, I just want to say thank you to Congresswoman Jayapal for having supported this campaign, being a part of the story that brought us to this point.
Great. You got the full endorsement of a squad member. Mamdani attended a breakfast with the spiritual leaders of the Democratic Party, including members of the squad and AOC. One does have to wonder if he privately was praying for the global intifada that he has steadfastly refused to condemn. Meanwhile, Bernie Sanders was gushing with socialist, radical, Marxist praise. I am deeply impressed by the grassroots campaign Mamdani is running. The oligarchs are prepared to undermine democracy and spend tens of millions of dollars to buy the election for his opponents. We will not allow that to happen. Only question is, I wonder if Grandpa Bernie lent Mamdani his private jet, the Fight the Oligarchy private jet, for today's visit. In reality, as we have reported, and the New York Post has reported, billionaire George Soros has already funneled nearly $40 million into far-left groups backing Mamdani, who now does lead in the polls. Now, don't forget, this is a guy who has literally vowed to seize the means of production, hike New York's already high taxes through the roof, burdensome regulation, a cradle to grave, womb to the tomb utopia that'll never happen. And needless to say, New York's business leaders, they are deeply concerned. And I predict if he wins, there'll be a mass exit to my free state of Florida. But they have nothing to fear because the Empire State Therapist in Chief, Kathy Hochul, she's on the case. Go, Kathy. Take a look.
I've spoken to hundreds of business leaders saying, listen, nothing is going to happen to this city without me being aware of it and involved in it. So don't talk about packing up and leaving and all these other, overreactions. We're going to be okay no matter what happens. And so I've had to do I've become the therapist in chief, it seems. So saying, everybody, we're going to be okay. Maybe it's the mom in me. I know how to calm down situations and we'll get through this. Don't panic, everybody.
Don't panic, but think about it. Wall Street South is very real. Every private equity company, every investment firm, every big bank, they all have offices in South Florida. It's called Wall Street South, and it's growing by the day. And I predict Mamdani gets elected, it's going to grow by leaps and bounds. But if Mamdani's elected, no one will be there to rescue New Yorkers. Governor Hochul will not be able to help. At least no one from the Democratic Party will be able to help. They will live in constant fear of their radical base. They don't even have the courage to insist that Mamdani fully condemn the global Intifada. Now, to be clear, an Intifada is a holy war against Jewish people. During the first Intifada, more than 100 Jews were murdered and more than 1,000 were injured. Global Intifada means a global holy war. At a closed-door meeting, Mamdani, he promised that he will not use the term globalize the Intifada. That's far from condemnation. Doesn't mean he doesn't support it. He's been given numerous opportunities to condemn it. He steadfastly refuses. The truth is, in today's radical Democratic Party, it does not matter so long as he supports the tenets of radical socialism, Marxism, statism. He can get away with pretty much anything. All while establishment Democrats, they cower in fear. Chuck Schumer, really, you support this? Watching their party morph into something that is truly horrible. Well, Senator Kennedy from Louisiana says it best. Everybody had a kid in their class. I had to think twice about this. Everybody had a kid in their class growing up who ate paste. Not exactly sure what he means, but the problem is that Zoran Mamdani and Representative Ocasio-Cortez both grew up to be the leaders of today's Democratic Party, and the rest of the party has no idea what to do.
The Epstein saga has led to some startling revelations. For example, we just uncovered the only black man on Earth with no musical talent.
Epstein died by suicide.
Killed again. How come he's always so damn funny? Dreams him or I start laughing out of nowhere. Like, what the hell? Get him, Dad. The devil.
Oh, man. That guitar is now demanding assisted suicide. Hank Johnson makes Mike Huckabee look like Eddie Van Halen. Now, Hank's a Democrat, and like many today, they're now demanding answers on Epstein. But you got to ask, where were they when we were the only ones demanding answers over the years?
Where were they?
Their guy was in power. So what did they do with all those big scandals? Well, they mock them, and not just Epstein, the Russian collusion hoax, the COVID lab leak, the Biden cover-up. Each one was a huge scandal and a huge cover-up, and the Dems treated them the way women treat Star Wars fans. With zero interest. But now that Trump's in power, they see an opening exploiting the MAGA rift around Epstein. And I get it. They have no policies. Epstein is the only hope they have. Before this, all they had was supporting men who shave their nut sacks in women's locker rooms. Now, Trump just had the greatest start to a presidency in history. I haven't seen anything come out of the gate this fast since Joy Behar won the Kentucky Derby. Always works. I don't know. Yet we're supposed to focus entirely on Epstein. Sure, if a list of organized child rapists at high levels exists, that is huge. But remember, while you were caring about that, the Dems weren't. But now that it's a political issue, they do. And sure, the DOJ isn't perfect. If it were, they'd call it the Department of Sidney Sweeney. But it's miles ahead of what we had last time. The DOD isn't leaking or leaving billions of military gear behind in foreign countries. The FBI is no longer doing domestic terror investigations on parents and Catholics. And they moved pornography out of the children's library to where it really belongs, the Clinton Library. But now people whisper that Trump's vulnerable. But look, if someone flooded your basement for 4 years, you can't expect it to be bone dry overnight. And I get it. You can't just ignore this, because that's what the Dems would do. And that's not Trump. He doesn't run from chaos. He embraces it. I would say Trump is as cool as a cucumber, but why bring Ana Navarro's sex life into this? We get that there are details that we don't know about. And it could be that releasing them would put the country in danger. Or perhaps this information can be used to nail some really bad people. And once we do that, then the files can come out. Maybe it's not about protecting people, but this country. We trust Trump on everything else, and he's delivered. Why would he suddenly depart from that? Given his record, we can trust he's making the right call. And I get it. We invested a lot in this, but we were also led astray. We were told that there was a client list. But take it from Alan Dershowitz, Epstein's lawyer. He says Epstein never had one. So is he right? It's a valid point.
He was on the list, so this is all crazy.
It keeps a list of the crimes that they commit. However, I did see a list floating around on the dark web, and sadly, most of the names were redacted because they might be innocent, but some were not. Let's take a look at the list. I don't know if it's real. I don't know if it's real. The point is, if Trump's not releasing something now, it's because he knows more than we do, which is kind of how it's supposed to work. When he bombed Iran, he didn't put it out on a Google Calendar invite. Because if Trump's going to tell us, then he's also telling Iran. So this isn't a town hall. It's not even a pure democracy. It's a constitutional republic, meaning we elect Trump to make the tough calls. We don't do the job, he does. I would say that's why he gets paid the big bucks, but he's doing it for nothing. And he took a bullet for us. So he's earned our trust. And while I get the urgency about this matter, when it comes to national interest, maybe trust that Trump is doing what you hired him to do. He's got access to intel we'll never see, and right now it's too dangerous, perhaps, to give away. But until Trump tells us what's what, why help the Dems undermine all these big wins? Because before Trump, we sure weren't getting many.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here.
Now let's get into the dark shit, which is Jeffrey Epstein. Let's go. Here we go. There's a bunch of shit, you guys.
Epstein, a situation that continues to unfold. We do know that the Wall Street Journal released some exclusive reporting today, and President Trump responding to that reporting with this on Truth Social. He says the Wall Street Journal and Rupert Murdoch personally were warned directly by President Donald J. Trump that the supposed letter they printed by President Trump to Epstein was a fake. And if they print it, they'll be sued. Mr. Murdoch stated that he would take care of it, but obviously did not have the power to do so. The editor of the Wall Street Journal, Emma Tucker, was told directly by Caroline Leavitt and the president and by President Trump that the letter was a fake. But Emma Tucker didn't want to hear that. Instead, they're going with a false, malicious, and defamatory story anyway. President Trump will be suing the Wall Street Journal, News Corp, and Mr. Murdoch shortly. The press has to learn to be truthful and not rely on sources that probably don't even exist. Trump has already beaten George Stephanopoulos, ABC, 60 Minutes, CBS, and others, and looks forward to suing and holding accountable the once great Wall Street Journal. It has truly turned out to be a disgusting and filthy rag, and writing defamatory lies like this shows their desperation to remain relevant.
Men doing at least 150 grand a year. If you're completely out of shape, let's drop the ego and get real for a moment. If you haven't been ripped in 10 years.
If there
Where's
were
my
any truth
ad
at
blocker?
all
Is
on
it
the
not
Epstein
on?
hoax as it pertains to President Trump, this information would have been revealed by Comey, Brennan, Crooked Hillary, and other radical left lunatics years ago,
ad
Trump says on
blocker
Truth
not
Social. He
on?
finishes by saying it certainly would not have sat in a file waiting for Trump to have won 3 elections. This is yet another example of fake news. The president posting all of this on Truth Social, following it up with, based on the ridiculous amount of publicity given to Jeffrey Epstein, I've asked Attorney General Pam Bondi to produce any and all pertinent grand jury testimony subject to court approval. This scam, perpetuated by the Democrats, should end right now, the president says. Pam Bondi then responding to that, saying, President Trump, we are ready to move the court tomorrow to unseal the grand jury transcripts. A lot to unpack here. Kalen Dees is here. He's with the Washington Examiner. Let's start from the beginning. Let's catch the evening audience up on everything that's happened today. What was that lengthy Truth Social post in response to? What did that bombshell Wall Street Journal report say?
Thanks for having me on, Austin. Yeah, so essentially the Wall Street Journal report was saying that there were a number of letters that were sent to Epstein related to well wishes. I believe it was around a birthday for Epstein, and it was, including Trump as one of the people that was sending these messages out to Epstein. And Trump immediately, from the gate, said that this is fake stuff. This isn't something that I would have signed on to. There's plenty of speculation out there about, people, coming to his defense saying, was it just something that he signed, things like that. But obviously, it's not a good look if it looks like, the president before, when he wasn't the president, was sending these well wishes, even though we all know that Donald Trump disavowed Epstein eventually, whenever he began to have some ill feelings about him. So yes, it's not a good look amid this talk, especially whenever we're seeing a lack of transparency from an administration that has vowed to release more files from the Epstein case for months and months, and to get that 2-page memo last week that said they're essentially done with the investigation and release of information. It's not necessarily a good look, although we see now that the president is going to file a lawsuit, or says he's going to file a lawsuit. So that's where it takes us now.
He is going to file a lawsuit against LiveNow's parent company. I should mention, this is what Attorney General Pam Bondi is saying. President Trump, we are ready to move the court tomorrow to unseal the grand jury transcripts. Do we have any clarity, Kaylin, as to where this is headed? What could come of this?
Yeah, so it's a great question, because if you go online right now, you're seeing a lot of people, a lot of influencers saying that this is Pam Bondi's move to release more Epstein files, which in effect, if you're reading the tweet as it stands, it looks like she's moving to release more files. But the question that really should pop out to everyone is, what exactly can they do to compel a court to do this? As we saw from Trump's post, he gave a lot of deference to the courts if they're willing and able to release some of these grand jury transcripts or testimony, as he put it. So the real question is, we haven't seen the DOJ yet make a filing or a move to release some of these grand jury filings. It's not even clear. They didn't specify what case this is, although the assumption is that it's the closed criminal case for Jeffrey Epstein, closed after his death, as it was never able to go to a trial. So we're assuming that it's coming from something related to that case. But the real thing that is perplexing is that this is something that the DOJ could have done a long time ago if it wanted to. They could have already begun this process. So it's almost giving off the impression that this is something that they're just now deciding to do, even after they released the memo and made it seem like that they were done releasing information for now. So it's quite perplexing from that standpoint, because you would wonder why they didn't do this before. And again, just because the Attorney General is saying that she's going to follow Trump's lead in order to do this doesn't necessarily mean that tomorrow we're going to be getting unsealed filings. Though I will say it does come as, people have been saying, from our reporting last week, we got Alan Dershowitz to say that this was not a DOJ problem, that it was a judge problem. So it seems like there's a little bit of a bend toward that narrative, at least coming from the White House.
Caitlin, this is what the VP is saying. He says, "Forgive my language, but this story is complete and utter BS. The Wall Street Journal should be ashamed for publishing it. Where is this letter? Would you be shocked to learn they never showed it to us before publishing it? Does anyone honestly believe this sounds like Donald Trump?" I believe it continues. Yes. Doesn't it violate some rule of journalistic ethics to publish a letter like this without showing it to the victim of this hit piece? Well, the people who have bought into every hoax against President Trump show an ounce of skepticism before buying into this bizarre story. So we're getting reaction from President Trump, Attorney General Bondi, and VP Vance tonight. You've been following this story now, as have we. Does it feel like it's actually possible to quench the appetite for more Epstein information that's out there?
Well, if you take a look at what has been said and done with this case, all we know at this point is that there are still sealed filings out there from both civil and criminal cases, and sealed filings in the Ghislaine Maxwell case, which I would argue is going to be a difficult one to pry open, at least while she is still going through her appeals. So we know that there is some information related to this. We also know that there's apparently a vault out there containing thousands of FBI-related documents surrounding the Epstein case. And also, we've heard from court testimony over the years that some of the evidence that was being looked into at Epstein's properties also went missing. So there's a whole sort of cornucopia of possible information that still exists out there. What we would maybe find from these transcripts, as they're being called by the Attorney General, could be another ounce or added layer of transparency. It could maybe include hearsay or some names of people that were allegedly involved in Epstein, whether it was for alleged criminal activity or whether it was just somehow they were in the same room together for some reason. That is the type of information that could be relayed through transcripts, although we can't say, there's no way any of us can know. And again, I will stress, there's no way it will be clear that we will actually be able to obtain this information until we see a judge's response. Now, again, I bring back that Dershowitz mentioned because he brought up the fact that there were two judges in New York that had information. He claimed that they were protecting people, essentially. He didn't name these judges, but we do know that there is a couple of cases in New York involving two federal judges that have looked into, that have, handled the Epstein cases. So that is something that perhaps, at least like I said before, the criminal case involving Epstein could be the target. Seems likely, especially with him being dead.
We're hearing from Caroline Levitt. She's the press secretary. She says the Wall Street Journal published a hatchet job article with a fake birthday letter that is supposedly from 2003. This is like the Steele dossier that kickstarted the Russia hoax all over again. The Wall Street Journal refused to show us the letter and conceded they don't even have it in their possession when we asked them to verify the alleged document they're basing their entire fake story on. When has President Trump ever spoken like the conversation alleged in the fake Wall Street Journal story? That's not at all how he speaks or writes. The Wall Street Journal knowingly published false information to smear the President of the United States. As I said at the podium today, there is a coordinated hoax by the Democrats and fake news to smear President Trump, and we've seen throughout both of his terms. President Trump mentioned this in his Truth Social post, Kalen. He said that he's already won lawsuits against ABC and CBS. Catch us up on those cases. And are there any parallels perhaps to draw between those cases and what we may see with an upcoming case? Is it too soon to make those comparisons?
Well, I think with every type of defamation lawsuit that gets filed, it's important not to compare apples to apples. Just because Trump has won some of them, in the case of George Stephanopoulos at least, there was that reference to the E. John Carroll case where a jury found him liable for sexual assault, whereas when George Stephanopoulos was speaking about it, he used the term rape. So I think that that is something that he got the facts wrong completely. And it was something that he had to ultimately pay the price for. At least court found that to be the case. So I think that when you're looking at, especially when you're talking about letters, and the fact that there was, the administration is upset with the fact that there wasn't anything shared with the person that this piece was about, the president. I think that there's definitely that animosity, that vitriol, and some of that, winning spirit that Trump might feel, that he thinks that he can, get another scalp against the media company with a potential lawsuit like this. Again, we haven't seen the lawsuit filed yet, but we're assuming that it's coming. So it'll definitely be interesting to see. Maybe there will be additional information by the authors of these pieces to clarify more. But definitely, you're seeing an emboldened Trump here, especially after the victories like you referenced.
Before we go, here's the big question that I know a lot of people at home have. President Trump is saying that Bondi is seeking to release grand jury testimony from the Epstein case. Does that fall short of most critics' demands to release all of the files, plain and simple?
Oh, totally. I mean, just to release the transcripts, testimony, things like that. I mean, that is just, I would say, the skim off the top of the milk. I mean, you can't really say that you're going to satisfy people if you're only going after a fraction of what still remains out there. And when people say, you hear this phrase often, release everything, release all the files, that does not sort of cut it. So it definitely shows that because the story hasn't been able to go away, the administration is beginning to take hints from the base, especially his base, because this is, one of the issues that a lot of political commentators said, was a complete 180. And I think that there was a moment where Trump felt like he could just dismiss this. He's still dismissing it. While he's saying we're going to do this, he's still calling it a hoax. He's still saying that people are weak to be wrapped up and care about this. So he's playing sort of both chords right now on that issue. And I think that he thinks that perhaps if he does this, he can get people to sort of pipe down a little bit more. But to the point, to his gripes about this, I think that there's just some information. You can talk to former prosecutors about this. You can talk to former FBI about this. There's just some files from the FBI that they do not have to listen to the public on. They don't have to just respond to demands from the public to release something just because there's a high interest in it. And so that's going to be something that's ultimately going to be very dissatisfying, I think, because while there's this effort that we're seeing underway right now, it remains to be seen if there's going to be anything satisfying in there. I mean, who knows? There could be some information inside these transcripts that doesn't necessarily look good for Trump because maybe it says something or takes something out of context, or maybe not even Trump, but somebody else high profile. And so that could be sort of the spring trap in all of this, is if there's even one mention of a high profile name or politician or, a banker or celebrity, things like that, it's going to spark an uproar because everyone's going to just be finger pointing at that. But it likely won't have all the context that people need, and especially won't have the context to bring an indictment, because we would have already seen one by now if that information was anything to present, culpable evidence or things like that.
Galen Deese is with the Washington Examiner. We appreciate the insight. It'll be fascinating to see how tomorrow plays out. We'll talk with you soon.
I actually thought they were fair and like that. I like that source there, to be honest. I thought they were fair.
saying there was no client list for her Department of Justice to release, which is convenient given the speculation that Trump might be in the so-called client list. Trump wanted an attorney general who would be his lawyer. Bondi has acted that role in other contexts, firing the prosecutors of the January 6 rioters, purging officials who worked on Trump's criminal cases. On Wednesday, Bondi's DOJ fired Maureen Comey, a veteran federal prosecutor who happens to be the daughter of Trump's nemesis, former FBI Director James Comey. Maureen Comey also, get this, helped prosecute Jeffrey Epstein and his associate, Ghislaine Maxwell. In a farewell email to colleagues, Comey wrote, "If a career prosecutor can be fired without reason, fear may seep in the decisions of those who remain. Do not let that happen. Fear is the tool of a tyrant wielded to suppress independent thought." Eric Holder served as the Attorney General under President Obama for 6 years, and he currently chairs the National Democratic Redistricting Committee, and he joins me now. It's great to have you on, Mr. Holder, and I wanted to just start with your reaction to the firing of a distinguished computer civil servant in Maureen Comey, and as someone who served in the role of Attorney General, to give a context of how much of a sort of violation or abrogation that is of what has been Department of Justice protocol and practice for decades, as far as I can tell.
Well, I think the dismissal of Maureen Comey is a travesty. It's inconsistent with the way in which Justice Departments under Republican as well as Democratic attorneys general have conducted themselves. But what happened to Maureen is consistent, unfortunately, with what has happened to a number of other career prosecutors and FBI agents who, for whatever reason, got on the bad side of this administration. And this administration, this attorney general, Mr. Beauvais, Todd Blanche, have not had any concern about dismissing people for reasons that are wholly inappropriate and inconsistent with traditions of the Justice Department. And this is going to come to bite them in the butt, because no one now believes that the Justice Department is doing things in a way that is really moored to the truth. And when we're talking about this latest revelation, I think people need to ask themselves, in terms of the release of materials, do you really think that Pam Bondi and the Justice Department are making the determination as to what gets released? Or because she is the lawyer for Donald Trump as opposed to the American people, or is her client, Donald Trump and the people in the White House, making the ultimate decision? And I think that it is clearly the White House that's making the determination about the release of these materials.
You know, that's such an interesting point I hadn't thought of, that there is a way in which this norm of Department of Justice independence that was quite solid, I think, after Watergate particularly. And there's places where it waxed and waned, the U.S. attorney scandal under George W. Bush and Alberto Gonzales. But that norm, what you're saying is, in some ways kind of works in both directions. Whereas, like, if it's actually the case that there's independence there, if the attorney general does something that brings heat, the president plausibly can say, like, I had nothing to do with it, and that could be true. Right. In this case, it's clear to everyone that that's a ludicrous thing for anyone in this administration to ever say about any Department of Justice action.
Right. By having the Justice Department be, as it should be, an independent part of the executive branch, there's an insulation that the White House gets. Because that has been broached here or breached here, anything that is determined to be normally within the confines or the ability of the Attorney General to make, we all know that it is not the Attorney General who's making final calls. It is, in fact, the White House. And that goes to a whole bunch of things with regard to Epstein, with regard to personnel decisions, with regard to positions that the Justice Department is taking in a variety of cases. It's not DOJ that is making the ultimate calls. It's the White House.
I'm going to ask you one more question on Epstein just while we're on it, and then there's a bunch of other things I want to talk about. Just on this last part, I mean, I know it's preposterous. It doesn't even actually make chronological or logical sense. But since you were the Attorney General under Barack Obama, along with Loretta Lynch, Donald Trump saying that Barack Obama created the Epstein files. Yeah, any reaction to that?
Oh, yeah. All right. That's absurd. I mean, that's fundamentally absurd. And I think that one of the things that we've got to do is make sure, again, consistent with people's privacy interests, and foremost among those being the victims, release all the materials. Just release all the materials, and then everybody can look at them and make determinations as to who placed things in there, who is engaged, who knew Jeffrey Epstein, what was the nature of their relationship. Just let all the stuff out there. They've talked about this for years when they were out of office and talked about all kinds of conspiracy theories. And now that they're in office and have the ability to release this material, they suddenly have decided that they don't want to do that. And when I say they, that's people in the White House.
Yeah, there's some interesting stuff from the Brady room today where Levitt was saying, well, the judges and DOJ, as if like those are obstacles for this administration. Let me ask you about a man that you just mentioned, Emil Bovee, and we were just talking about him with Senator Booker. I mean, this is someone who I think acted in a way at the Department of Justice we've never seen someone act, certainly not in my lifetime, and maybe not since Nixon, and maybe not ever, in terms of how he used the department as a pure tool of the president, seemed to violate court orders, struck this insanely corrupt deal in Eric Adams that led to mass resignation in the office. What does it mean to have this guy as an appellate judge for the country, for the Constitution?
This nomination is a travesty, and people in the Senate who oppose that nomination should do all that they can to make sure that, in fact, he does not get confirmed to a seat on the Third Circuit Court of Appeals. This is a guy who dismissed a case against Eric Adams, and when asked, said, well, it doesn't have anything to do with the facts, doesn't have anything to do with the law, but never, in spite of that, we're going to dismiss the case, obviously for political reasons. He was the hatchet man who came to the Justice Department early on and was responsible for the dismissal of well-intentioned, good, well-serving career prosecutors as well as career FBI agents. Involved also in withholding materials, creating a Brady violation in a case that ultimately had to be dismissed by those great prosecutors in the Southern District of New York. There is nothing in his record, absolutely nothing in his record that would justify him getting a Court of Appeals slot. There's a ton of things in his record that render this nomination, as I said, a travesty. And I would hope that people in the Senate, I'm not totally conversant with Senate rules, but I would hope that a senator would put a hold on his nomination and make the Republicans do everything that they have to do in order to place him in what is a lifetime appointment. He doesn't deserve it. He does not deserve it.
One of the issues that you've spent a lot of time thinking about, working on, as I said in the introduction, is redistricting and gerrymandering particularly. And it can sound sort of obscure, but fundamentally what it means is how democratically representative are state legislatures and the United States Congress. And there's something that's happened this week that is sort of an enormous bombshell in its own way, yet another kind of assault on democratic representation and norms as well, which is that Donald Trump has sort of gotten the governor of Texas to call an emergency session after the deadly flood. Not all the bodies are yet recovered, if I'm not mistaken. Over 150 people have died, still many more missing. To call a special session right after this flood with the aim of doing a mid-decade redistricting to net Republicans 5 more seats. Ohio is considering the same thing as well. What does this mean? What is your reaction to that?
Well, here's the deal. Republicans are concerned that as a result of the terrible things that they have done, that with regard to the budget bill, the way in which they are enforcing the immigration law and snatching people off the streets by men who wear masks, the fact that inflation is ticking up, the assault that we see on the rule of law, they're concerned that they're not going to be able to win the 2026 midterms. And they're afraid of the very people who they say they want to represent. And so what they're doing is to try to come up with ways in which they can rig the system, manipulate the system. And so they're looking at Texas, and they want to draw the lines there in such a way that they think that they can guarantee themselves 5 additional seats for Republicans. This is a closely divided House of Representatives, and they think that, well, let's get some insurance there. And they're going to try to do the same thing in Ohio. The redistricting in mid-cycle in Texas is really kind of uncalled for. We have already been suing Texas for a gerrymandered map that they put in place in the beginning of the decade. They're now going to try to make this even worse, and to do so, especially at the expense of people of color. And the Justice Department has given them a letter that tries to give them cover for what it is that they are trying to do. But at the end of the day, this is not just a Texas story. This is a national story, because if they succeed in rigging the system, you'll end up with a House of Representatives that is not representative of the desires of the American people. We're sick and tired of what this administration has been doing.
Let me ask you this. I've asked you this before. I remember when I asked about sort of partisan gerrymandering versus sort of nonpartisan commissions, like they have in some states. I think Iowa is one of them. There's other places as well, where I said, look, that may be the ideal situation, but given the world we live in, don't you have to fight fire with fire? Like, shouldn't California, you can draw a 52-0 Democratic map in California. You can. I mean, the math is there. You could probably make it work. Should you do that? I don't know. But at a certain point, it does seem to me like deterrence is important from a game theory perspective here, that if Texas and Ohio are going to do it, then some other states step up to do it as well.
Well, what we have stood for is fairness. And I think that people need to understand that fairness will get us into the place where we should be. Now, the possibility exists that Texas might consider doing something, but I have to say, it is not as easy as people think. There is in place there, by virtue of the Constitution in California, an independent commission that draws the lines. What's happening in Ohio with regard to their redistricting is mandated by their state's constitution. So I think we should try to stop that which Texas is trying to do, try to make the process in Ohio a fair one. And we will sue to the extent that they do something that's inconsistent with the Voting Rights Act or any other statute that we can use. But at the end of the day, I don't think that we're going to have the ability to draw a 52-0 map in California. But I think, again, we fight them to try to stop them from doing it. And then if they do it, we take them to court. And what I would say is, if people want to help us.
Here we go. Next one. Hope everybody's doing well. Hit the like, share, subscribe. We're only like 100 away from our goal for
President Trump is hearing this at another day of growing calls to release those Epstein files. President Trump now directing Attorney General Pam Bondi to ask a court for the release of, quote, pertinent grand jury testimony in the case of the deceased convicted sex offender and the former friend of Donald Trump. The president made that announcement last night in a social media post, saying his decision comes based on the ridiculous amount of publicity given to Jeffrey Epstein, his words. The president also called the Epstein case a, quote, scam perpetuated by the Democrats, while also saying the whole matter should end right now. In response, Attorney General Bondi posted on social media last night that the Justice Department is, quote, ready to move the court tomorrow to unseal the grand jury transcripts. Meanwhile, President Trump now says he will sue the Wall Street Journal over its latest reporting about a letter Trump allegedly sent to Jeffrey Epstein back in 2003. According to the Journal, the letter was part of a larger gift Epstein's former girlfriend, Ghislaine Maxwell, was preparing. It was an album of dozens of letters from Epstein's friends and associates to mark his 50th birthday. People who have reviewed the notes tell the Journal the pages are among the documents the Justice Department reviewed when it investigated Epstein and Maxwell years ago. It's unclear whether these documents are part of the Trump administration's recent review. The Journal reports it reviewed the letter bearing Trump's name, describing it as bawdy. The paper writes the letter, quote, contains several lines of typewritten text framed by the outline of a naked woman, which appears to be hand-drawn with a heavy marker. The letter concludes, happy birthday, and may every day be another wonderful secret. NBC News has not independently verified that document. In an interview with the Journal on Tuesday, the president denied writing that letter, saying, quote, this is not me. This is a fake thing. I never wrote a picture in my life. I don't draw pictures of women. It's not my language. It's not my words. The Journal reports the president then threatened to sue the paper if it published the piece, which it did publish. The Justice Department has not responded to the Journal's request for comment, and the FBI declined to comment as well. Last night, after that story was published, Trump slammed the piece in a Truth Social post, calling it false, malicious, and defamatory. He went on to say he will be suing the Journal, its parent company News Corp, and its owner, Rupert Murdoch. So, Jonathan Lemire, this is an explosive piece. You can read through the details. There's text, dialogue written, typed out. There's a photo, a drawn picture of a woman around it as well as part of this birthday gift to Jeffrey Epstein more than 20 years ago. Donald Trump says it's not true. He says he's suing. Wall Street Journal stands by the story.
They do. This story had been rumored for a few days. It was echoing throughout the sort of New York and Beltway media sphere that the Journal had something and had something big, and the White House was trying to squash it. And in fact, as the paper chronicles, there was a phone call Tuesday night with President Trump, which he denied it. Trump himself posted on social media that he called editors at the Wall Street Journal and Rupert Murdoch himself to say, don't run this. And in Trump's accounting, Murdoch said he would try to stop it, but then didn't. So that's some of the backstory here. But this is seemingly a big deal. It's further, the letter, if accurate, suggests more connections between Trump and Epstein. We knew they were friends, certainly. Trump has spoken about that. They've been photographed together. But it is a pretty bawdy letter. There's an imagined dialogue between Trump and Epstein that is, some could view potentially incriminating or at least weird. The drawing is pretty graphic, which we won't fully describe here. Caddy that Trump, allegedly wrote on this letter to Epstein. Now, Trump is vociferously denying it. We have seen him intimidate media organizations before the threat of lawsuit. We opened the show talking about how he has sort of his shadow covers the media landscape right now. So we will see. The White House is vociferously denying this. They say they're going to put out more material, although we should note grand jury transcripts far from the full thing. Where do you think this goes from here? Is this revelation going to impact not how Americans view this story, but also Republicans and how they will now handle this going forward, as they've been willing to defy Trump at least a little bit to this point?
I don't know. I mean, I think anyone who thinks that Donald Trump doesn't have a bawdy side to his character has been living under a rock for the last 20 years, right? I mean, we know this. The Access Hollywood did nothing to stop Donald Trump getting elected in 2016, and he's saying it on tape. So I don't think there is much surprise about this in terms of what it may or may not reveal about Donald Trump's character and his attitude to sex and women. We've seen that before. I mean, I think what it does, perhaps paradoxically, is it gives the White House, as we saw that with Caroline Leavitt, we saw it with J.D. Vance, who finally weighed in on the story late last night. It actually gives them some kind of an opportunity to turn this into a kind of railing against the press. And that's always a very much more comfortable zone for them to be in. And if they can say, look, this is now, let's shift the focus, right? The next distraction, let's stop thinking about Epstein. And you're seeing that with some of the influencers. I think Laura Loomer has already kind of weighed in on that too, that this is actually the White House against the press. Yet again, the press is maligning us. I think that's probably safer ground for the White House, in fact.
Yeah, and David Drucker, it seems to be actually a perfect off-ramp for a lot of these influencers. We've been talking about these MAGA influencers who have said, you promised you were going to release the files. You haven't released the files. We're going to stay on this until you release the files. Oh, look what the big bad Wall Street Journal did to Donald Trump. He's once again a victim of the mainstream media. And they immediately, it's not like they have short attention spans. They see the 88% in this poll, and suddenly they're going, oh, now we can attack the Wall Street Journal. Again, Murdoch owned, but now we can attack the mainstream media, and that can fill up our shows for the next 2, 3, 4 days, and we don't have to talk about the Epstein files.
Yeah, that's correct. There's a couple of things going on here, Joe. First of all, I think we ought to find a video of Donald Trump reciting the snake, right? Because he lived by the conspiracy theory, died by the conspiracy theory. He's fueled so many of these, and it's been a part of his political strength, particularly with the irregular voters. So the facts might be murky to some, but this is really an issue of Trump's own making when you really look at it. But the other thing here is, as you know, Joe, for many Republicans, they simply don't believe negative reporting, right? And 25 years ago, we would have talked about bias in reporting, but not whether the basic facts were correct, but it would have been about how they were presented. One of the things that has worked so well for Trump politically is that he will simply refute facts, refute stories. Many voters with years of distrust in the media, believing it was biased toward the Democrats against Republicans, believe Trump's refusals and denials. And so instead of having a conversation about whether or not, I should, as a voter, should I support or not support Trump based on these facts? These facts aren't true. They're out to get Trump. And then Trump always turns it around. And they're not really out to get me. They're out to get you. This has worked very well for him. And it's why I'm always skeptical that things like this that, in theory may or should cause an administration all sorts of political problems. I always have a wait and see approach.
Yeah, I mean, it would be, Willie, any one of these things would probably end the political career of just about everybody on the political landscape. But Donald Trump has moved past everything from Access Hollywood to January the 6th. He got reelected again. Chances are good a Bondi birthday card, if he did in fact send that, even if his own voters see stronger evidence of it, not going to impact him with a base.
And as David said, it's a measure of how well he has conditioned his supporters to distrust the media, that he can convince them that the Wall Street Journal, owned by Rupert Murdoch, is a tool of the left. The larger point, though, Jonathan, even if this story doesn't stick with his voters, is the fact that is whispered by some of these same podcasters and influencers who support Donald Trump, that Donald Trump was friends with Jeffrey Epstein. He's no wrongdoing. He says he didn't do anything wrong in this larger case, but that they were friendly and that he may have written him a letter on his birthday and that they did go to Atlantic City and hang out in the 80s and 90s. So that is out there when he's so defensive about this and saying it should go away. It's a scam. It's a hoax. The very people who support him but are so invested in the Epstein story are saying, why are you so anxious for this story to go away?
Yeah, I think this is one of those moments where two things are true at once. Certainly, as you just discussed, Trump has been very good at moving past a lot of scandals that would have doomed any other political candidate, Access Hollywood chief among them. It is not a surprise that he uses the, quote, in his words, locker room talk sometimes. But this time, the locker room talk will be attached to a significant criminal conspiracy. And there's certainly no evidence of any crime committed by President Trump, no wrongdoing at all, yet it's going to fuel questions of this unseemly relationship. And that's part of it. And I don't think, as much as, no doubt, those on the right can now rally against the Wall Street Journal, can rally against the media, at the same time, there are fundamental questions about the Epstein matter persist. I don't think those are going to go away. This is a conspiracy theory created largely on the right. It has fueled Republicans and MAGA influencers for a long time. They have ignored Trump's wishes to let this go. And I think right now, Willie, that's going to persist. And the grand jury testimony, yeah, that'd be a piece of this if it comes out, if indeed the Attorney General is able to release some of that. But that's still a small part of the investigation. Now, some of it, of course, will never see the light of day. It's sensitive. It involves, as we've heard from Tom Winter and others, there's no actual list. Some of the material there involves minors. That, of course, shouldn't be released. But there's still going to be questions about what else is there. And it's hard to see those fading anytime soon.
Well, and Willie, Jonathan just made the key point on why this is different from other scandals or dust-ups or whatever you want to call it. This has been a conspiracy theory that has been pushed by MAGA. This has been a conspiracy theory that's sort of been a foundational part of the MAGA base and their worldview, their view toward the federal government for years now. So the fact that NBC News, Tom Winter, Ken Delanian, David Rode, the fact that they all say there is no list, there is no there. If there ever were, it got destroyed years and years ago. And there's no more incriminating information on Donald Trump, again, based on their reporting, NBC News reporting. That's one of the reasons why the media and the, I think, Democrats, for the longest time, haven't acted on this, not because they were part of some grand conspiracy theory involving Tom Hanks and Oprah. It's because they saw the reporting that there was no there there. And so here we are at a very interesting time where the mainstream media has believed it. The Democrats have believed it. Now it's the MAGA base who would be the last to believe, need to believe for Donald Trump that there's no grand conspiracy theory here that the deep state took part in. But, you know, that may take a while to get from here to there.
All right. Let's see what we got next. Nope. All right, guys. Here we go. Sorry. Here we go.
The Trump administration needs to be more transparent about the Jeffrey Epstein case. Pence sat down with our Major Garrett on the takeout yesterday. Here is some of that conversation.
President Trump said the Jeffrey Epstein matter is a hoax. Last week, his Justice Department said there were more than 1,000 victims of Jeffrey Epstein. Last summer, Trump said he was open to declassifying all the relevant files and the Epstein client list, and that his suicide looks suspicious. How can all those things be true and it be a hoax? I don't understand where things stand with all this.
I think the time has come for the administration to release all of the files regarding Jeffrey Epstein's investigation and prosecution. It's important that we protect the names of the victims. They should be excluded from any disclosure. But whether or not the facts justify charges, I think that anyone who participated or was associated with this despicable man ought to be held up to public scrutiny.
One of the most aggressive investigative reporters in our country, Julie K. Brown, was on my show last night, and she said when the Justice Department last week said 1,000 victims, she said that was a higher number than she was familiar with and indicated to her that there have to be accomplices. Accomplices that some of the victims have named that worked with Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. And she said, shouldn't there be some inquiry into whether or not those people should be exposed to criminal prosecution?
Well,
do you agree with that?
I just think we ought to get the facts to the American people. I mean, I've always believed in transparency.
And when the president says it's all a hoax, what is he talking about?
Well, Jeffrey Epstein's prosecution began during the Bush administration. Continued.
He's blaming it on Democrats.
The Obama years.
It's not a hoax.
I know of no reason why this administration, once the victims' names are protected, should not release all the files on Jeffrey Epstein.
Understood.
And CBS News chief Washington correspondent Major Garrett is joining me to talk more about this. Major, fascinating interview, and you essentially asked the question that is on everybody's mind who's not politically connected to this, right? And it does seem as if Donald Trump and his supporters have backed themselves into a corner. They fed fire to this conspiracy theory. They used it to campaign. They used it to help Donald Trump get elected. And now he's the deep state, if that's the word that we're using, and he should have the power to release these files. And you also had the attorney general go on Fox News and say, yeah, I got them right here. I'm looking through them. So you're seeing this divide now on the Hill between Republicans who want to see these files released and those who are sort of towing the line with the president, trying to do a head fake by suggesting it's the Democrats. What was most fascinating to you about Pence's reaction to all this?
Well, good morning, Vlad. It's great to be with you. And just a quick explanation to the viewers. Not in the fancy studio. We have a power outage here in the neighborhood in D.C., so we don't have any video services right now in the Bureau. We hope to get them back, so we're doing everything via Zoom. Welcome to my blurred office. The most interesting thing that Vice President Pence said is that which the president he once served has a very hard time dealing with. The imperative to release the files while protecting the victims' identities. So all who are curious about the Jeffrey Epstein matter, how he was being prosecuted, are there accomplices? Were there people who helped Ghislaine Maxwell or Jeffrey Epstein in their sex trafficking, human trafficking, predatory behavior? All of these things are real issues. For those in the MAGA movement, the way the Jeffrey Epstein case was handled, and to their minds, grotesquely mishandled, represents elites protecting elites, and maybe some aspect of the U.S. intelligence community overlaying those elites protecting elites. And that sort of goes to the crux of what many in the MAGA movement believe is fundamentally flawed about the federal government. Whether or not that's true, they believe it, and they believe it with such an ardor that this has become the first significant and sustained division within the ranks of MAGA that I have seen. And I started covering Trump and that movement in 2015.
So the president, as you know, Major, has responded to critics. I want to play a bit of what he had to say yesterday, and then let's talk about it.
It's all been a big hoax. It's perpetrated by the Democrats, and some stupid Republicans and foolish Republicans fall into the net, and so they try and do the Democrats' work. They're wasting their time with a guy who obviously had some very serious problems, who died 3-4 years ago.
Major, you talked about covering Trump and his movement going back to 2015. You will also remember during that campaign, Hillary Clinton used one word to describe Trump supporters. She called some of them deplorables, right? And that was seismic, a seismic shift in what we saw between that race between those individuals. And now he's calling his supporters stupid, and he's calling the people who he has those folks who have helped him ascend to the presidency, who've given the MAGA movement life. He's calling some of those. He's not going to be president in 4 years, but like, is this a good strategy?
It is the strategy he has for the moment embraced until he's forced to adopt another one. He gave a radio interview last night, it was released this morning with John Solomon, in which the president hinted that there might be something involving him in the files, and they would study releasing anything in those files that is credible, putting the president and the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, as the custodians of credibility. Now, we already have things out there in the last 3 weeks from Elon Musk saying Trump's in the Epstein files. Well, Trump came a little bit closer last night to acknowledging that's possibly true. And he may try to say, if there's anything about me in there, that's fake, that's phonied up by Democrats to try to create some other context for this. On this story for the MAGA movement, they have basically come to the determination, Vlad, that they'll be the arbiters of what is credible or not credible. They just want to see what's in there, have the victims protected, but they want to evaluate it on their own, in part because for months, if not years, those closest to President Trump has said this is one of the most important and revealing scandals of how Washington actually operates. And most of the MAGA movement believe because Trump was out an outsider, Trump could not be bought, Trump had clashed with the intelligence community, he alone was positioned to ferret out and deliver unto them the truth. That he is now in a position where he's not only suggesting that might not happen, but that anyone who continues to pressure him for that to happen is a dupe or being duped or has suddenly lost focus and needs to move on, is, again, one of the first dividing lines within the MAGA movement, Trump to it to Trump, that I've seen in almost 10 years, more than 10 years.
Fascinating. Major Garrett, always great to have you. And thank you for getting on the air for us, even though there is a power outage. And you got to show us your office there, but you blurred it. I kind of want to know what's back there now.
Oh, sorry.
Thanks, Major. You can watch more of Major's conversation with the former vice president on the Takeout's YouTube channel. And of course, you can stream the Takeout with Major Garrett Monday through Friday at 5 Eastern right here on CBS News 24/7.
Bro, you can freaking capitalize MAGA. You're being fucking insane with that, bro. He said, don't you dare freaking even use MAGA capitalized. I swear I've never seen it not capitalized before, bro. Yo.
Alive over Jeffrey Epstein. So is Donald Trump himself for dessert? Joining us now, former Republican congressman and author of The Breach, The Untold Story of the investigation into January 6th, Denver Riggleman, managing editor of The Bulwark and MSNBC contributor Sam Stein, and senior reporter for The Bulwark and author of Trust the Plan, The Rise of QAnon and the Conspiracy That Reshaped the World, Will Sommer. Will, this fever swamp is the one that you dwell in most, so I'm going to stick with you on this. Why is the Epstein files saga, why is it so sticky? Why can't Donald Trump just push his way out of it?
I mean, I think it's very evocative. I think unlike maybe other moments where he's disappointed the base, like let's say going to war with Iran, it's something that really sticks with people. I mean, it's about a pedophile network, at least in the real world, there is some amount of truth to that. And then they've taken that and run with it and made it far crazier. And as a result, more emotionally touching to them. And so people expected to get, justice as they saw it. I mean, they thought a lot of Democrats were going to go to prison. They thought this was going to be this huge moment for them. And then for Trump to then turn everything around and say, no, we're not doing that at all. And actually, you're a weakling if you believed any of that. I mean, it's upsetting.
Kind of weird.
It's upsetting, but how upsetting is it going to be, Will? I mean, when we look at Alex Jones saying that Donald Trump might be complicit, when we see Nick Fuentes, I mean, these are obviously not upstanding figures in American life, but we see Nick Fuentes going after Donald Trump in the way that he did, or you see Megyn Kelly try to couch it by saying, I'm still a Trump supporter, but I don't trust them. How long does this survive? How much damage is it going to do to the MAGA base? And does that damage that extend to Donald Trump?
I think it's a big deal. I mean, I think we're seeing, as you said, people on the fringe like Alex Jones, Nick Fuentes, but even people who are pretty close to the White House, like the people who got those Epstein binders a few months ago that turned out to be such a debacle. Even they realize like they're kind of stuck between Trump and the audience, and they're starting to attack Trump over it too. And so when you see those people who are saying that, I mean, I think they can see which way the wind is blowing, and the base is really upset about this. I mean, I was watching one podcaster who said, I mean, this is like the worst Trump has been with the base in 10 years. I mean, people are mad about it.
Denver, is this the dog that caught the car?
Yeah, well, this is crazy eating its own tail, and we saw this in January 6th. By the way, that was the best beginning of any show I've ever seen. I was laughing through the whole thing. So here's the thing, right? When you lose the nutters, the conspiracy theorists, and the neo-Nazis, you're losing a huge base of the MAGA voting party. This is about spiritual warfare. And when you're talking about the Epstein files, it's been this rationalization of how do we get over the pictures of Donald Trump with this? How do we get over that he's been, adjudicated for sexual abuse? How do we get over all the things he's been accused of? Well, we've had Republicans, GOP, and MAGA telling us for years that the truth was going to come out. And Trump runs on this exposing the deep state and the globalists. It's this conspiracy theory baseline. And that's really how policy is made in this administration. It's about conspiracy theories. And, obviously, Will's an expert on QAnon. I've had the good fortune of looking at the QAnoners that were going on January 6th and what they believed in when they attacked the Capitol. And I had the pleasure of being attacked by QAnon after I officiated a same-sex wedding. So I think what you're seeing right now, when you see Nick Fuentes and you see Alex Jones, you see Ben Shapiro, you see Megyn Kelly, this is actually real. I have never seen, I think Will's right too, I haven't seen in my time where there's something that the Democrats, independents, right, and I would say the moderate right can run on than this issue right here. It should be brought up every single day, because if these are not released, this is the biggest deal for Trump because he can't protect what he's been accused of, and it destroys the conspiracy theory base going forward.
Let me just read a few things here, so bear with me. I was reminded of this today. Donald Trump spoke to New York Magazine in 2002 for a Jeffrey Epstein profile. And here's what he said. I'm going to read it because it's important. I've known Jeff for 15 years. Terrific guy. He's a lot of fun to be with. It is even said that he likes beautiful women as much as I do. And many of them are on the younger side. No doubt about it. Jeffrey enjoys his social life. So Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein go back enough, and we're close enough to where a New York Magazine writer would call Donald Trump to get a quote on him, and that's what he said. Mick Mulvaney, Donald Trump's ex-chief of staff, was speaking to Al Jazeera and said this to Al Jazeera recently. He's in the files. A lot of people are in the files. But if anything damning was in the files about Trump, the Biden administration would have released them. Fine, fair point. And then you have the New York Times writing this about the MAGA supporters. This is by Sean McCreish. Natalie Winters, the war room correspondent and 24-year-old protege of Stephen K. Bannon, told the New York Times that Epstein goes to the very foundation of MAGA and added, quote, "I just think it's frankly very grifty to have spent your entire career promoting, even if it weren't the Epstein thing directly, but the idea that there is this deep state, the idea that there is this unelected class of, bankers, corporations, countries, intel agencies, blah, blah, blah. And then finally, you have the power to expose it. And either you're not because there's nothing there, in which case it makes you a liar. And I don't believe that. Or you're ineffective or you're compromised." What I'm surprised by, Sam, is, and this is why I asked, is Donald Trump for dessert? If there's any there surrounding Jeffrey Epstein and powerful people, I mean, Donald Trump has got to be at the top of that list. We have so many pictures of him with Jeffrey Epstein. There's so much history between the two of them. You have that quote of Donald Trump saying Jeffrey Epstein likes them on the younger side. If the conspiracy is that the powerful people are protecting Jeffrey Epstein or hiding the files because they don't want to be implicated, how has Donald Trump himself been able to escape scrutiny? And is it coming back to him now? Is he finally going to be scrutinized by his own base?
All right. Well, at the risk of undermining myself, let me just preface this by saying I've learned all I'm about to say from Will Sommer and from the work that he's done for the Bulwark. Not saying you should direct the question to Will, but my guess is that if Will were to answer this question, he'd say part of the issue here is that Trump has stoked these conspiracies forever, but also that he plays a central role in the conspiracy. Forever, for years, the QAnon base has basically assumed that Trump would be the one who exposed this great cabal of deep state pedophiliacs, and that Trump was pictured with Epstein and knew Epstein not because they were friends necessarily, but because he was put there for some larger purpose to unravel that deep state, to unravel that great cabal. What's disconcerting to them now, I suppose, is not that Trump is exposed as being connected to Epstein. We all saw those pictures a long time ago. We've read that quote from New York Magazine in 2002. We saw the weird photo, as we're seeing now, the video of them dancing and, biting their upper lips in an awkward way. It's that Trump won't follow through on the idea of transparency. And he's acting in this incredibly erratic way when asked about this stuff that, frankly, and I think objectively raises the question, is he hiding something? If he wants to, because all of this is supposed to culminate in some great moment of transparency, Trump now stands in the way of that. And so this is no longer necessarily a political problem for him. In a way, it's kind of a spiritual problem. I mean, this is an article of faith for MAGA. It's an article of faith for QAnon. And that is being supremely tested by Donald Trump right now. And that's why I think the congressman and Will and myself all conclude that this is a uniquely treacherous moment for him politically.
Do the supporters start to question whether they were misled by Donald Trump and his supporters, that maybe they were lied to? You saw Nick Fuentes say that this was all a big scam. You hear it from Natalie Winters, although she says she doesn't believe it. Is the end of this that they look at the Trump administration, the people that he put in charge, as a bunch of opportunists who were using them to get into power, who were willing to feed them anything to get back into office, Will? Or Sam?
Yeah. No, I was going to direct that to Will because he's got a great piece on this about the
I'm going to have the control room just take both Denver and Will and just squish it together, and then we'll just say, I'm kidding. I'm just kidding. Will, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I would say we're starting to see some evidence of that. I mean, in the case of QAnon conspiracy theories, often it's something that people know really in their heart, and they realize, oh my gosh, that's false. What else is wrong? And then they kind of come out of QAnon. In this case, I mean, we're seeing right-wing commentators and just sort of average people on the street who are posting on the internet saying, wait a minute, like, this is insulting to my intelligence that Trump is just telling me, get over it, a few months after J.D. Vance was talking about Epstein. Suddenly, now that's for idiots. And people are starting to get kind of upset about it. And this idea that, like, it's an insult to my intelligence, they must think I'm an idiot. I think that has the potential to really get people to turn on Trump more broadly.
What about the idea that they just keep believing it, Denver? Donald Trump says there's no there there, and there is no there there. But they say, you know what, I don't believe you, that there's no end to this. There's no Like, what would a resolution look like to people who believe this conspiracy theory?
There is none. There's no resolution if he doesn't release it. And here's why. So I had people come up and scream at me like, Jean Carroll was lying. You know, wait till you see the Epstein files. You got to remember, I own whiskey distilleries, right? I'm all over the country. And, Will is a QAnon expert. My unique expertise is being attacked by QAnon and have to go against them. So it's pretty cool, right? I think that all of us are on this show right now. But the issue that you have is when somebody comes in now and if they have no way to defend Donald Trump from all his accusations and from his adjudicated case, if he doesn't release the Epstein list or Epstein files, it's completely transparent. Spiritual warfare, the fact this is a spiritual tenet, which you've heard on here, the fact that this is an article of faith, this is the cascading effect of conspiracy theories that undermines the very administration that ran on conspiracy theories. And there comes a point when crazy can't be rationalized out because it's those very conspiracy theories that are driving the administration. And I'm telling you, there are people who are virulent Trump supporters, virulent. And, I ran as a Republican, Katie, right? They'll come to me like, I can't believe it. Maybe were they lying? Denver, you know a lot. What's going on? I'm like, hey, maybe if they don't release the list or the files, maybe there's something there. Maybe he was lying about Jean Carroll. And
but even if they did release the files, would that be sufficient? I mean, if they released all the files, and what would need to be in them in order to put this to rest?
They're going to redact a lot of the files. So as soon as you have redactions, and I think we'll say if we're going to laugh at this, as soon as you see redactions, they're going to say, what's behind the black line? Oh my God, it's a cover up from the deep state. Again, there's no way out if people actually can approach us in a way where they understand how these conspiracy theories work.
Right. What do we got here? No, we at the next one. Conspiracy theories, they say. Hit the like if you haven't. Subscribe if you haven't. Much love. Here's the next one.
NBC's Ryan Riley covers the Justice Department. Reed Galen is an independent political strategist and co-founder of the Lincoln Project. With me in studio, co-host of The Weeknight on MSNBC and former chief spokesperson for Vice President Harris, Simone Sanders Townsend. Simone, if you're working at the White House and a story like this drops, it clearly has made your boss, the President of the United States, upset. Does there need to be more of a strategy than deny? It's not like something is a surprise here in the sense of just yesterday when the White House press secretary was before the press, in 1 hour, she was asked about Epstein 9 times.
Yeah, it is a focus of interest, not just of the people who support the president, but also the press, because the way the president is acting is eliciting more questions
Democrats
and answers.
who have
and
made
Democrats.
a big,
And now there's talk about congressional inquiries and whatnot. So look, when you're working in the White House and a story like this drops, it is important to note that the Wall Street Journal went to the White House and asked for comment, so much so that in their own reporting, they note that they spoke to the president. That means that when the inquiry came, someone went to tell the president, and he must have decided that it was incumbent upon him to get on the phone directly with the Wall Street Journal. And one could argue that's a good strategy because it's not a spokesperson saying, oh, well, this isn't that. It's the president of the United States himself, the subject of the inquiry, weighing in. Here's the issue. We never, in this entire debacle, as I'm going to call it now, we have never heard about the underlying facts here. Epstein's crimes were real, okay? They were real. The victims were real. He was arrested and convicted in 2019. Before his trial could start, he died by suicide in jail. But his crimes were very real, so much so that there is another person currently sitting in jail for those crimes awaiting trial.
Ghislaine Maxwell.
Ghislaine Maxwell. But so we've never heard anything about that. No remorse for the victims for what Epstein has done. The president never spoke to any of those things. He also he tries to thread his needle very carefully. And it seems to me that they ran a playbook that they ran before. You get the president on the phone, he denies, and then threatens to sue. There are some outlets that would have had that conversation with the president and said, okay, gone back to legal and said, maybe we don't want to touch this. The Wall Street Journal seemed very confident in what they had, because it seems as though in their own reporting, they say it, they had people from the Justice Department who reviewed these. They had all this evidence behind it. So by the time this comes out, when you're the White House, you have really one option. The president's comments speak for themselves.
Yeah.
That is what you have to say. It is not sufficient, in my opinion, for all of these other political pieces we've talked about, Democrats on Capitol Hill, his supporters across the country who do care about this story, because Jeffrey Epstein is the perfect symbol for that so-called war on elites that the MAGA base has really amplified over the last 10 years.
So, Ryan, when the president talks about getting all the pertinent grand jury testimony released, do we even know what kind of information might be in it? Are we looking at a scenario where even if it did come out, it's a whole lot of redactions? Talk to us about that.
Yeah, I think redactions would be part of this. But I mean, critically here, the grand jury, what there was seek an indictment of Jeffrey Epstein. So you're going to have the focus being on Jeffrey Epstein, and sort of all of these, any other names I don't think are really going to be the core here, because that was what they came in there to do, was to seek that indictment. That's what the prosecutors were there to do. That's what the FBI agents who may have testified there. So I don't think we're going to get into this notion that there's more of a list. So in some ways, it's a little bit of a safe bet to sort of, feed the beast, I think, in a lot of ways, that there's this big demand for new information about Epstein, and putting out those grand jury transcripts is probably a little bit of a safe bet there going through this court process, because it's not going to go into details or give sort of all of the evidence over. It's just going to be solely what was focused on, what that grand jury was focused on, what prosecutors were focused on during that grand jury, which is getting an indictment and proving that there was probable cause to get that indictment for Jeffrey Epstein. So it's a sort of a narrower category. It's not just all the evidence being dumped out there, but it is very unusual for Chris, for the sort of grand jury information to come out. It's not the standard process that we've seen.
Not standard at all. So, Reed, even if it does get released, and that is a big if, is this going to give the MAGA crowd what they're looking for, given what we just heard? It doesn't sound like it's going to answer the two key questions that much of MAGA world has wanted answered. Did he indeed commit suicide? And number two, is there a client list?
Right. And I think, to Simone's point, this is really foundational to the MAGA myth that there were a group of people who have been consistently trafficking children. They were Democrats, right? This is the other part, too, is that this is almost a supernatural fight, Chris. And here's, I think, the biggest problem and why the MAGA base is now having sort of mass cognitive dissonance. This is Donald Trump covering up for the deep state, excuse me. And that means, you know what, to them, he's just like every other politician. He's holding up for Bilderberg and Davos and the Trilateral Commission. And, he doesn't want to release the truth behind Comet Ping Pong and all of the other insanity that we've seen over the years. And I think this is a moment where Trump feels very shaky because, again, he was always supposed to be different. He was always supposed to be the one who was going to peel back the onion and say, these people were as bad as you thought they were. Of course, the three of us, the four of us, the five of us all know he's been this bad, right? This isn't any surprise, whether or not it's a birthday card or whatever it is. So now the MAGA base has to say, okay, what are we going to do? Now, look, is he going to leave office? He's not. But this does have political implications, which is a lot of these people were not particularly politically involved until Donald Trump came on the scene. And the worst thing that can happen for him is that they just bleed back into the woods.
So, Vaughn, this letter that the Wall Street Journal says was attributed to Donald Trump, a bunch of people wrote them, apparently. It was given in a book to Jeffrey Epstein on his 50th birthday. It includes, according to the Journal, a drawing of a naked woman, including Trump's signature, and a typewritten message that starts with a line that says, "There must be more to life than having everything," and ends with, quote, "Happy birthday, and may every day be another wonderful secret." The Journal says the documents were examined by people who investigated Epstein and Maxwell, but we should note they've not been confirmed by NBC News. So what have we heard from the president on this? What more do we know?
Right. Our fellow news organization decided to go forward with this story despite 48 hours before publishing the president of the United States articulating that he would move forward with a lawsuit if they were to, in fact, publish it. I think that says something in itself. Inside of the Wall Street Journal story, the president's denial is strong. I'll read it to you. In the interview with the Journal on Tuesday evening, Trump denied writing the letter or drawing the picture. Quote, "This is not me. This is a fake thing. It's a fake Wall Street Journal story," he said. "I never wrote a picture in my life. I don't draw pictures of women," he said. "It's not my language. It's not my words." The president has a deep history of denying allegations of sexual misconduct. and denying, frankly, stories that put him into a bad light. And some of this has been echoed, I think it's important to note, by allies of his. Example, Alex Jones was on Steve Bannon's podcast yesterday and was suggesting that James Comey and other intel community officials were planting this type of material to make Trump look bad inside of the Epstein files, and that is why a special counsel is needed to wade through what is real and what is not real. I think, though, when you look at the president and the lawsuit that he is now threatening to put forward against the Wall Street Journal, he's directly calling out Rupert Murdoch. He had one this morning. He also had a post last night in which he says there, the Wall Street Journal printed a fake letter, supposedly to Epstein. These are not my words, not the way I talk. I don't draw pictures. I told Rupert Murdoch it was a scam, that he shouldn't print this fake story, but he did, and now I'm going to sue his bleep off, and that of his third-rate newspaper. Thank you for your attention to this matter. If the president were to actually intend to bring this to court, there would be depositions that would be a part of that lawsuit. And I think it would call into question the president and the extent to which he would be willing to even take the stand as part of a deposition himself. So I think that there's a lot that stems from this. Of course, the president is somebody who even suggested when the FBI executed that search warrant on his Mar-a-Lago estate in 2022. He had suggested that they had planted documents there. So the president, again, has a deep history of not only denial, but also suggesting wrongdoing that he does not back up with actual evidence and is never ultimately provide credence to those claims that he makes.
So, Reed, I find it interesting that a number of Trump's top allies from MAGA world and beyond, from J.D. Vance, Charlie Kirk, Laura Loomer, came quickly to the president's defense, calling this letter a fake. I wonder if, at least in some level, this reporting managed to do what the president hasn't been able to do, which is find some common ground for the president and his base. I mean, he has gone a far way with his base feeling he has been put upon. On the other hand, it's his base now that are the people who are going after him.
Yeah, and look, this is the leader principle, right? The MAGA doesn't have an ideology really of its own. It is whatever Donald Trump wants it to be at that given moment. The Epstein piece of this, or at least this latest piece, was so different because when the memo from Pam Bondi came out, remember that all of those same talking heads that you just mentioned started screaming about Pam Bondi and how she had done this. Not that Donald Trump had ordered her to do it, but that she had done it. And the Dan Bongino, deputy director of the FBI, was so mad that he was thinking about quitting, right? Because he spent years talking about this. There's a clip of Theo Vaughn and J.D. Vance laughing about how they got to release the list last year. And so now what you're seeing is the president and the White House calling on all of those talking heads, all of those MAGA supporters and spokespeople, say, get back in line. Get back in line right now, right? This is all a hoax. And Rupert Murdoch has always hated Donald Trump. He's part of the deep state. He's part of the people, the grown-up summer camp in Sun Valley, Idaho, and all the other stuff. And so the Wall Street Journal gives them the foil they're looking for. Whether or not the MAGA faithful will fall for it is another story, right? Again, this was foundational to their belief in this whole movement. And so I think that what you're seeing is that they are desperately trying to get everybody back in line, back on the same page, and time will tell whether or not it works.
All right. Everybody hit the like and subscribe. Hope everybody's having a good Friday. Here we go. Let's see what this was going to say. Hope everybody's having a good day.
White House, as MAGA leaders, top Democrats, and nonpartisan journalists demand answers about the Epstein files. This is new and dangerous territory for Donald Trump, as for the first time, he appears unable to control his own base. This morning, D.C. woke up to headlines like these. MAGA revolt. Trump discovers MAGA has no off switch. Trump and MAGA are no longer the same thing. Images of MAGA supporters literally burning their red MAGA hats are going viral online. And all of this comes a day after Trump berated Republicans as, quote, stupid and foolish for wanting more information about the disgraced financier who died by suicide while in federal custody. Today, Trump's secretary was bombarded with Epstein questions at this press conference.
Does the president believe that justice has been served in the Epstein case?
Does he have knowledge or an understanding of what is in the files related to Epstein that have not
been released. Has the White House been directly in touch with some of the MAGA influencers that are still not satisfied?
The president said that he floated the idea of a special prosecutor in the Epstein case. Can you confirm that?
Do you know what the president's reaction was to Mike Johnson saying that he wants additional files released? Was there a conversation with Mike Johnson about that following his comments?
There's been a lot of discussion about the Epstein files and the president's comments yesterday calling it a hoax. Can you clarify which part of the Epstein hoax is the hoax part?
An absolute barrage of questions with no relief in sight. Politico writes this, quote, Trump is like a magician who has locked himself in a straitjacket, only to find that he's lost his ability to maneuver out of it and finds his audience turning on him. Among those now speaking out are Trump's former vice president, Mike Pence, as well as top GOP senators and the MAGA broadcasters.
I think the time has come for the administration to release all of the files regarding Jeffrey Epstein's investigation and prosecution.
Maybe I'm just getting old and forgetting things, but I could have sworn that we had people campaigning, and if I get elected, we're going to release the files, right?
Yeah.
So
Yes.
Release the damn files. Get over it.
It's the administration and their handling of this, which is why everyone's talking about it. It didn't have to be handled this way. It's been abysmal.
I am trying to get you to take the political gun out of your mouth. You already blown both your feet off. And now you got it shoved in your mouth. I'm like, will you please take that out of your mouth? You're like, shut up. Don't talk about it. You have put the gun in your mouth and ours collectively. Stop it. Stop it.
And in a rare display of bipartisanship, top Democrats have also gotten in on the act, hammering Trump on the Epstein question.
For years, Donald Trump and the MAGA movement have railed on about the Epstein files. But now a complete reversal. Trump is straight up gaslighting the American public.
The president had run on a campaign with a promise to expose the Epstein files. Now he and the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, say, nope, nothing to investigate. When it comes to Epstein and sex trafficking, all these claims are just ludicrous.
Amid these calls for greater transparency, there's also new scrutiny on an unexplained move from the Trump DOJ. Maureen Comey, the daughter of former FBI Director James Comey, was until recently a longtime federal prosecutor who worked on a number of high-profile cases, including the prosecution of Ghislaine Maxwell, Jeffrey Epstein's associate. This week, Trump's DOJ fired her. Critics say it appears to be an effort to intimidate perceived enemies. Today, in a farewell email to her colleagues, Comey said that the DOJ letter informing her of her termination provided no reason for her discharge. In the email, which MSNBC has obtained, Comey issued a sharp warning to her colleagues in the Southern District of New York, saying, quote, if a career prosecutor can be fired without reason, fear may seep into the decisions of those who remain. Do not let that happen. Fear is the tool of a tyrant wielded to suppress independent thought. Instead of fear, let this moment fuel the fire that already burns at the heart of this place, a fire of righteous indignation at abuses of power, of commitment to seek justice for victims, of dedication to truth above all else. And that is where we start tonight. Donald Trump under fire from the MAGA base amid broader warnings about a presidential power grab. Joining me now is Barrett Berger, a former federal prosecutor from the Southern District of New York, and Aisha Mills, political strategist and former resident fellow at Harvard's Kennedy School of Politics. Aisha, you saw Donald Trump's press secretary faced with a barrage of questions over the Epstein files. Why can't Donald Trump figure out how to defuse this bomb?
Because Donald Trump doesn't want to. I mean, here's the thing. I just want to acknowledge for everybody who's watching this that we have literally been on like a week and a half distraction from what's really going on in America right now. Donald Trump is gutting the government. They literally just rescinded $9 billion in foreign aid. They're trying to shut down public broadcasting. They're taking Medicare from people, Medicaid from people. And here's where we are, is we're talking about this. We know that Donald Trump doesn't actually care about the victims, about those poor girls who are human trafficked. I think right now we need to be focusing on actually the victims of this and trying to get justice for this. And that's not something that Donald Trump is ever going to talk about. Ever.
I don't disagree, but he is losing his base over this. Like, there are folks in the MAGA faithful who are angry and they are baying for blood. Barrett, do you think the DOJ actually has more information than they're letting on here, and that there's something to these calls for transparency?
Well, I'm sure the DOJ has, thousands and thousands of pages of information that they produced in discovery. But the problem is not all information is sufficient to be released to the public. Here you're going to have hours and hours of child pornography that was captured on these recordings. You're going to have information that identifies victim, that gives personal stuff about them. You're going to have information that was gained through judicial process, like a grand jury, that simply cannot be disclosed according to law. So I think the big problem we have here is one of an explanation, explaining exactly why certain things can't be released, what the basis is. It may not satisfy people who really had their hearts set on getting their hands on this, but just because they can't see it doesn't mean they should.
Well, that's a great question, Aisha. So there's a lot of information here for lots of different reasons. Much of it likely cannot be released, but we are seeing people online burning their MAGA hats. And these are people who are deeply with the president. It seems like they would be receptive to an explanation, any explanation from this man whom they revere. Why won't this just go away? Why can't they give the explanation?
Well, listen, I think that Donald Trump, we all know, actually, let me not, say, I think Donald Trump is guilty of a variety of things and hasn't been held accountable for them, period. What his base does and our distraction with that is literally that. What I'm interested in, be it Republican or be it Democrat, is why isn't anybody talking about the fact that if they were so riled up about this Epstein case and getting justice for these victims, why is Donald Trump defunding, literally just completely dismantled the Violence Against Women Act and completely defunded all support for people who have been trafficked, for human trafficking? There's so much that could actually happen that would be with regards to policy that would actually support and protect people that we could be talking about. And right now it just feels more like a political circus that I don't think is going anywhere.
So, Barrett, this is a political circus, and actually doesn't feel like Donald Trump is necessarily in the middle of it. The one person who does seem to be getting the brunt of all of this is Attorney General Pamela Jo Bondi. How much trouble is she in from this base that's calling for her ouster?
Seemingly a lot. It seems like she still has the support of the president, but as we know, you have the support of the president until you don't. And it's just like the fact that anyone who actually cares about protecting victims and standing up for them and doing something about sex trafficking, the person who cared the most about doing that was the person they just fired. Maureen Comey, more than anyone else, was somebody who not only, talked the talk of wanting to protect victims, but spent the last decade doing the hard work to do that, not just in the Epstein case, but as we just saw over the last 2 months in the Combs case. This is somebody who's dedicated.
This is the P. Diddy trial.
Correct. Yeah. So this is somebody who has just dedicated her career to standing up for victims, to doing the work that people are talking about. And the fact that they've fired her while also saying we care about this is just wildly inconsistent.
And keep in mind that this president has spent most of his life trying to avoid accountability for the things that he's done against women. So here we are.
Well, let's go to Maureen Comey. Barrett, what do you make of this? This seems to be a very unusual step, an unorthodox step, to fire a career prosecutor who has never had any complaints about her performance. But she also happens to be the daughter of someone who has, even in the last couple of months, been the target of a lot of ribbing from the Trump loyalists. What's actually going on here?
On one hand, it seems very consistent with the pattern that we've seen. We've seen plenty of not only DOJ folks being fired, but across the government, we've seen sort of these wide sales. This one's different because it is so individually targeted to her, with really no connection to her actual work as a prosecutor, at least what we know so far. It seems like from her resignation email, this was totally unexpected from her, and the letter gives no explanation other than, citing to Article 2, which is just, the executive's, authority to do so, but really gives no analysis or rationale for this. Right. This is really, it feels just so personal. And I said before, it just, to me, strikes me more because of her last name than anything that she has ever done as a prosecutor.
As a former prosecutor yourself, what do you make of her farewell email to her colleagues at the Southern District of New York?
It was a wonderful email. It was, very righteous, talked a lot about what everyone, not just in the Southern District, but I think throughout U.S. attorneys' offices in the country, what we sort of embodied, which was this idea of prosecuting cases without fear or favor.
And the Southern District, that has been its credo for a long time, the sovereign district of New York.
And you need that ethos because what you're doing is prosecuting people regardless of their political party. You know, the Southern District of New York has brought cases against Republicans as often as it's brought cases against Democrats. It's brought cases against powerful people and people with no power. So they really live up to this credo. And the fact that she cites that and really seems to be saying this is now in jeopardy is pretty striking.
Right. Here we go. Everybody hit the like, share, subscribe. Hope everybody's having a good Friday.
It is a blockbuster story that has heads here in Washington spinning. The Wall Street Journal reported on a collection of birthday letters gifted to Jeffrey Epstein in 2003. 3 years before he was charged with any crimes. One of those letters, the Journal says, it includes what appears to be Donald Trump's signature, and it's a cryptically written letter, a crude drawing of a nude woman done with a heavy marker. The president quickly denied it was him and says he'll sue the Rupert Murdoch-owned paper. But the politics here are complicated. Yes, it looks bad for the president.
Nobody wants this shit.
But it also
Nobody
may
wants to
unite
watch this.
the movement that has been fractured over the Epstein saga. Even those critical of President Trump's handling of the Epstein files are rallying against their common enemy, the media.
Quite frankly, the Murdochs concocted something last night and thought it'd be a kill shot on President Trump. And lo and behold, it's the exact opposite because President Trump is now on offense. President Trump is best when it's attack, attack, attack. This is the deep state. This is the ruling class in America. They're trying to use it to destroy President Trump.
The president and I talked about that ridiculous allegation this morning. He said it's patently absurd. The president is the most maligned and attacked political figure in the history of American politics. There's no question about it, but he's also the most resilient. And did you see the language of this bogus supposed communication or card or something I supposedly sent to Epstein? He said, I don't talk like that. I don't think like that. They're literally making things up.
I'm joined by a terrific group of reporters here at the table. CNN's Lauren Fox, CNN's Phil Mattingly, Jasmine Wright of Notice, and Nia Malika Henderson of situation and of Bloomberg. We made it to Friday, one and all. Congratulations. Who would have thought? Jasmine, you cover the White House full time. What are you hearing from your sources about the implications of what we have seen in the last 12 hours?
Yeah. Well, Donald Trump is furious. That cannot be downplayed. That cannot be understated. He's going to speak in just a few hours. Everyone is waiting to see what he says when he's signing at a bill signing later on today. But the implications, I think, are twofold. One, the White House has been trying for days to put this behind them, this whole Epstein thing, trying to get the MAGA movement to move on. I've talked to numerous White House officials who basically say whatever is going to happen is going to happen. We're not going to change. Yesterday, we heard the press secretary say that Donald Trump did not believe that he needs to recommend a special prosecutor for this case. And now you have those same MAGA allies who were really enraged with the White House, maybe not so much the president, but certainly how the administration was handling it, basically defending the president all of a sudden. And they're kind of getting the best of both worlds. Yes, they're back on Donald Trump's side because they can defend the president against the media, but they're also now getting what they believed to be is more access potentially to documents now that he's asked Pam Bondi to, basically request grand jury release more documents. Of course, who knows if that actually happens, but they're kind of in a good position right now, which they have not been for days.
And Phil, let me just go back a little bit and read some of what is in that, what the Wall Street Journal says is that letter, that birthday letter, what it allegedly said. Donald, we have certain things in common, Jeffrey. Jeffrey, yes, we do, come to think of it. Donald, enigmas never age. Have you noticed that? Jeffrey, as a matter of fact, it was clear to me the last time I saw you. Donald, A pal is a wonderful thing. Happy birthday, and may every day be another wonderful secret. Now, again, I just want to be clear. This is an imagined conversation, allegedly written in a birthday message by Donald Trump between the two of them. Now, let me just read to you the president's denial. The Wall Street Journal printed a fake letter, supposedly to Epstein. These are not my words, not the way I talk. Also, I don't draw pictures. I told Rupert Murdoch it was a scam, that he shouldn't print this fake story, but he did, and now I'm going to sue his ass off. And that of his third-rate newspaper, as he likes to sign these days. Thank you for your attention to this matter, ! DJT. Bill?
Yeah, there's a lot of layers to this that I don't think we have the time to totally unpack. I think that it is important, though, to try and provide a window into how this actually works from the reporting side of things, because and I think you hear this from Steve Bannon, this is a Murdoch's concocted conspiracy to push through. That's not really at all how any of this works. And I completely agree with Jazz that this is a moment where the base, which has been fractured on some level, maybe not to the degree that people want to try and say it's going to be, but has certainly had some difficulties in a way that we haven't seen Trump deal with over the course of the last decade, has united behind attacking a common enemy. The bylines on this are important. One of the bylines is the same reporter who broke all of the catch and kill stories that, as we learned during the civil trial in New York last year, were all 100% accurate. The Journal was facing an immense amount of pressure from the White House, from the president himself, from his team leading up to this. They have a lot of lawyers. You're not printing this if you don't feel like you're in a very solid place on this. That process is not understood. This isn't something that they just pop out to pop out. This is something that they wouldn't have put out, especially given the current environment when it comes to journalism and legal issues, if they didn't feel confident in it. We don't have it. I don't know what it actually says or means. I do think it probably shows that we should just release everything. Right? Just release everything. This would probably be in it. But I think the president's response and his base's response is both predictable and probably puts him on the best footing that he's been in on this issue in the better part of 2 weeks.
And you heard Speaker Johnson, totally dismissing it. I do have to say that, and I want to talk a little bit more about how the Democrats are handling this in a minute, but Gavin Newsom, who has really enjoyed his role as Donald Trump's foil recently, he tweeted, "I never wrote a picture in my life," and that was it was kind of a retweet. Underneath it is an image from the Washington Post article back in 2019, and it was a sketch that Donald Trump did himself of the Manhattan skyline. Very different kind of sketch than what is allegedly the sketch that he drew, that he gave to Jeffrey Epstein, which is R-rated.
Yeah, Democrats obviously have really seized on this issue because they did view it as a way that the MAGA movement was fracturing. And what extent that movement was going to continue to fracture over this issue, I think remains to be unseen. But obviously, Democrats feel like they can take the high ground here. There's no cost to them to basically argue over and over again, release everything, get it out there. Let's see if Donald Trump is afraid of something here, or if this is just really about the fact that he wants to move on for some reason. Meanwhile, it's hard because on Capitol Hill, you have some Republicans who are pushing this pretty hard as well. I mean, there are 2 moving resolutions right now that deal with this issue. One of them from Thomas Massie, that likely, if every Democrat signed on, may get a vote on the House floor. Then there was this last-minute agreement last night where GOP leadership basically had to bow to some conservatives who were happy to vote for a spending cuts bill, but weren't going to do it until they got assurances that there was going to be more transparency over the Epstein issue. Now, the resolution is non-binding, which means that there's no action forced for the Justice Department here, even if it moved along the legislative process. Also, Speaker Johnson has not promised when he would put that on the floor or if he's going to put that on the floor, but that just underscores here, members are hearing from their base. Like when you talk to members on Capitol Hill, they say that people are lighting up their phones about this.
And there is an alliance, an uncomfortable one, with Democrats who are, as we have been talking about this week, taking a very different tack on this than they have in the past. They're jumping in. They're not sort of abiding by the old playbook of don't bother your enemies when they're going after each other.
I gotta get to the next one because I can't take these women talking like this forever. And we're gonna cover the Trump press conference live. So I want to get in as many stories as I can while I'm live. So that being said, no. Yeah. All right. Here you go.
Trump is hearing this. Another day of growing calls to release those Epstein files. President Trump now directing Attorney General Pam Bondi to ask a court for the release of, quote, pertinent grand jury testimony in the case of the deceased convicted sex offender and the former friend of Donald Trump. The president made that announcement last night in a social media post, saying his decision comes based on the ridiculous amount of publicity given to Jeffrey Epstein, his words. The president also called the Epstein case a, quote, scam perpetuated by the Democrats, while also saying the whole matter should end right now. In response, Attorney General Bondi posted on social media last night that the Justice Department is, quote, ready to move the court tomorrow to unseal the grand jury transcripts. Meanwhile, President Trump now says he will sue the Wall Street Journal over its latest reporting about a letter Trump allegedly sent to Jeffrey Epstein back in 2003. According to the Journal, the letter was part of a larger gift Epstein's former girlfriend, Ghislaine Maxwell, was preparing. It was an album of dozens of letters from Epstein's friends and associates to mark his 50th birthday. People who have reviewed the notes tell the Journal the pages are among the documents the Justice Department reviewed when it investigated Epstein and Maxwell years ago. It's unclear whether these documents are part of the Trump administration's recent review. The Journal reports it reviewed the letter bearing Trump's name, describing it as bawdy.
Let me guess. You're thinking about going to therapy. And as a therapist myself, of course I'm going to say that's a great idea.
The paper writes the letter, quote, contains several lines of typewritten text framed by the outline of a naked woman, which appears to be hand-drawn with a heavy marker. The letter concludes, happy birthday, and may every day be another wonderful secret. NBC News has not independently verified that document. In an interview with the Journal on Tuesday, the president denied writing that letter, saying, quote, this is not me. This is a fake thing. I never wrote a picture in my life. I don't draw pictures of women. It's not my language. It's not my words. The Journal reports the president then threatened to sue the paper if it published the piece, which it did publish. The Justice Department has not responded to the Journal's request for comment, and the FBI declined to comment as well. Last night, after that story was published, Trump slammed the piece in a Truth Social post, calling it false, malicious, and defamatory. He went on to say he will be suing the Journal, its parent company News Corp, and its owner, Rupert Murdoch. So, Jonathan Lemire, this is an explosive piece. You can read through the details. There's text, dialogue written, typed out. There's a photo, a drawn picture of a woman around it as well as part of this birthday gift to Jeffrey Epstein more than 20 years ago. Donald Trump says it's not true. He says he's suing. Wall Street Journal stands by the story.
They do. This story had been rumored for a few days. It was echoing throughout the sort of New York and Beltway media sphere that the Journal had something and had something big, and the White House was trying to squash it. And in fact, as the paper chronicles, there was this phone call Tuesday night with President Trump, which he denied it. Trump himself posted on social media that he called editors at the Wall Street Journal and Rupert Murdoch himself to say, don't run this. And in Trump's accounting, Murdoch said he would try to stop it, but then didn't. So that's some of the backstory here. But this is seemingly a big deal. It's further, the letter, if accurate, suggests more connections between Trump and Epstein. We knew they were friends, certainly. Trump has spoken about that. They've been photographed together. But it is a pretty bawdy letter. There's an imagined dialogue between Trump and Epstein that is, some could view potentially incriminating or at least weird. The drawing is pretty graphic, which we won't fully describe here. Caddy that Trump, allegedly wrote on this letter to Epstein. Now, Trump is vociferously denying it. We have seen him intimidate media organizations before the threat of lawsuit. We opened the show talking about how he has sort of his shadow covers the media landscape right now. So we will see. The White House is vociferously denying this. They say they're going to put out more material, although we should note grand jury transcripts far from the full thing. Where do you think this goes from here? Is this revelation going to impact not how Americans view this story, but also Republicans and how they will now handle this going forward, as they've been willing to defy Trump at least a little bit to this point?
Yo, Dougie.
I know. I mean, I think anyone who thinks that Donald Trump doesn't have a bawdy side to his character has been living under a rock for the last 20 years, right? I mean, we know this. The Access Hollywood did nothing to stop Donald Trump getting elected in 2016. And he's saying it on tape. So I don't think there is much surprise about this in terms of what it may or may not reveal about Donald Trump's character and his attitude to sex and women. We've seen that before. I mean, I think what it does, perhaps paradoxically, is it gives the White House, as we saw that with Caroline Leavitt, we saw it with J.D. Vance, who finally weighed in on the story late last night. It actually gives them some kind of an opportunity to turn this into a kind of railing against the press. And that's always a very much more comfortable zone for them to be in. And if they can say, look, this is now, let's shift the focus, right? The next distraction, let's stop thinking about Epstein. And you're seeing that with some of the influencers. I think Laura Loomer has already kind of weighed in on that too, that this is actually the White House against the press. Yet again, the press is maligning us. I think that's probably safer ground for the White House, in fact.
Yeah, and David Drucker, it seems to be actually a perfect off-ramp for a lot of these influencers. We've been talking about these MAGA influencers who have said, you promised you were going to release the files. You haven't released the files. We're going to stay on this until you release the files. Oh, look what the big bad Wall Street Journal did to Donald Trump. He's once again a victim of the mainstream media. And they immediately, it's not like they have short attention spans. They see the 88% in this poll, and suddenly they're going, oh, now we can attack the Wall Street Journal. Again, Murdoch owned, but now we can attack the mainstream media, and that can fill up our shows for the next 2, 3, 4 days, and we don't have to talk about the Epstein files.
Yeah, that's correct. There's a couple of things going on here, Joe. First of all, I think we ought to find a video of Donald Trump reciting the snake, right? Because he lived by the conspiracy theory, died by the conspiracy theory. He's fueled so many of these, and it's been a part of his political strength, particularly with the irregular voters. So, the facts might be murky to some, but this is really an episode, an issue of Trump's own making when you really look at it. But the other thing here is, as you know, Joe, for many Republicans, they simply don't believe.
Look how much I'm saving on my electricity bill this month because of my utility allowance card. So this is the utility allowance card. This card gets
negative reporting, right? And 25 years ago, we would have talked about bias in reporting, but not whether the basic facts were correct, but it would have been about how they were presented. One of the things that has worked so well for Trump politically is that he will simply refute facts, refute stories. Many voters with years of distrust in the media, believing it was biased toward the Democrats against Republicans, believe Trump's refusals and denials. And so instead of having a conversation about whether or not, I should, as a voter, should I support or not support Trump based on these facts? These facts aren't true. They're out to get Trump. And then Trump always turns it around, and they're not really out to get me. They're out to get you. This has worked very well for him. And it's why I'm always skeptical that things like this that, in theory may or should cause an administration all sorts of political problems. I always have a wait and see approach.
Yeah, I mean, it would be, Willie, any one of these things would probably end the political career of just about everybody on the political landscape. But Donald Trump has moved past everything from Access Hollywood to January the 6th. He got reelected again. Chances are good a Bondi birthday card, if he did in fact send that, even if his own voters see stronger evidence of it, not going to impact him with a base.
And as David said, it's a measure of how well he has conditioned his supporters to distrust the media, that he can convince them that the Wall Street Journal owned by Rupert Murdoch is a tool of the left. The larger point, though, Jonathan, even if this story doesn't stick with his voters, is the fact that is whispered by some of these same podcasters and influencers who support Donald Trump, that Donald Trump was friends with Jeffrey Epstein. He's no wrongdoing. He says he didn't do anything wrong in this larger case, but that they were friendly and that he may have written him a letter on his birthday and that they did go to Atlantic City and hang out in the 80s and 90s. So that is out there when he's so defensive about this and saying it should go away. It's a scam. It's a hoax. The very people who support him but are so invested in the Epstein story are saying, why are you so anxious for this story to go away?
Yeah, I think this is one of those moments where two things are true at once. Certainly, as just discussed, Trump has been very good at moving past a lot of scandals that would have doomed any other political candidate, Access Hollywood chief among them. It is not a surprise that he uses the, quote, in his words, locker room talk sometimes. But this time, the locker room talk will be attached to a significant criminal conspiracy. And there's certainly no evidence of any crime committed by President Trump, no wrongdoing at all, yet it's going to fuel questions of this unseemly relationship.
Everybody, I am going to be switching streams over and covering the live press conference for Trump. So I hope to see you all there. Come talk your stuff. Much love. If not, have a beautiful Friday. Hello to everybody that just popped in the chat. Like, share, subscribe. Much love.